McKinley.
It's 5:30 and we haven't started yet.
Oh no! Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Jen and Jake's Bizarre Affray. Last time you saw us, we finally graduated beyond the preliminary rounds of this show, recommending each other some good shit, recommending each other some bad shit, and now we are in the thick of things because I technically was victorious in the preliminary round. I got to choose to pick the first bad thing to recommend my co-host Jen, which today we are going to discuss is the work of Doug Walker, and
Selected works.
the selected ambient works by Doug Walker. And we're also going to be discussing Jen's recommendation to me, which was the good recommendation, that being the album from Miranda Lambert, The Weight of These Wings. So we've got some great stuff to talk about, and we've got some great music to talk about this week. But Jen, I'm going to throw it over to you real quick because you've seen some shit recently, haven't you, my brother?
I've had an adventurous week. I'm not even gonna front.
Hell
So
yeah.
we record these on Wednesdays. So this time last week, last Tuesday, I drove to Detroit after work to see one Mr. Kendrick Lamar Duckworth.
Kung
Uh,
Fu Kenny.
we went to the
What
Grand
happens on
National
Earth
Tour.
stays on Earth.
We went to the Grand National Tour. We saw Kendrick and SZA, me and my fiance. We had a fucking amazing time. Oh my God. I didn't even realize that DJ Mustard is basically the opening act. He comes out and does like a set. And so he was playing a bunch of stuff from his catalog and he was playing some club classics that got things really moving. That got us really
Sick.
excited. And all throughout the show, I wonder how much this was influenced by the Scare and the Hose tour because they took a similar format. The two of them, Kendrick and SZA, kind of moving in and out of the stage, using their good half dozen of collaborative tracks as transitions. So basically, you would have, Kendrick would start. SZA comes out and they did 30 for 30, and then Kendrick goes away and SZA does a few songs, and then Kendrick comes back for a different collab song that they did together. The set list is no, really great show all around. Very good like film snippets that I hope get released to the public one day, but also I kind of don't because I like that being privileged information. But
That is cool.
some very cheeky, like they've got them both set up in these interrogation rooms talking about depositions and all this crazy shit that may or may not tie into the lawsuit with UMG. I don't fucking know, but it's
Hmm.
nice to just be like, what's going on there? And that be kind of the ethos of the concert a little bit because it doesn't take away from the music, which is really nice. I saw Kendrick a couple of years ago at Bonnaroo, which, I'm about to talk about that. And this is my second time seeing Kendrick live, and God, this show is good. He played almost all of GNX throughout,
Mm.
segued in. A lot of good Kid Mad City rep, which made me very happy. He
That's
did the
like some
first,
of his most tourable music, I feel like.
he did the first verse of Mad City as like a solo Blue-Eyed Soul number with a new mix underneath it. It was
Oh,
fucking
that's
hilarious.
awesome.
It
That's
was
so
fucking
sick.
it was fucking hilarious. I loved it. Once I realized it was happening, the crowd just went insane for it. It was so great.
You want Kendrick to be that kind of bravura live performer, which I think he proved during the Super Bowl performance this year, but he's the kind of guy who, like with his many talents, his many accolades, you want him to be able to put on a show-stopping fucking performance whenever you go see him. And the fact that he can do it is just fucking like, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed that we got a zero Section 80 rep because one of my favorite moments of the Bonner performance that I saw him at was when he did the chorus for ADHD and acapella for everybody as a
Oh yeah.
as a kind of test for the oldies. It was one of the best moments of the whole night.
I would
And
want to hear "Fuck Your Ethnicity" or "High Power Live" just because,
I think
like,
we're a few years beyond that.
no,
I'm
I'm
trying to
not
be, I'm trying
old.
to
I'm
be,
not old. I said as I shrink into a corner and get all wrinkly.
but then the next day we drive from Detroit to Manchester, Tennessee to get ready for Bonnaroo. We go to Bonnaroo on Thursday. Thursday for Bonnaroo is kind of light, but we saw the Lemon Twigs, which were wonderful. And we saw Luke Combs put out a great show. Miranda Lambert showed up and they did a couple songs together, funnily enough.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, they've got a duet on his album from 2022, the album that the Fast Car cover is on. Really good
Oh,
track. And then she took over the band for a bit, did Kerosene. It was a great moment. It was a really nice surprise.
that's
Uh,
cool.
but then the rest of Bonnaroo got rained out.
Oh, fucking, it's so lame that like rain has been the permanent fucking downer where Jen and I live this year. We're getting absolutely slammed by it 9 ways to Sunday.
Yeah, because Bonnaroo, for those who maybe don't know, I'm in Louisville. Bonnaroo's like 3, 4 hours away, depending on where you stay. If you're actually going to directly to camp there, which we didn't do, it's like 3.5. But I was really looking forward to Bonnaroo, and I'm sad that it got canceled. But I'll have another fun concert story to tell next week because I'm seeing Tyler the Creator in Cincinnati, so we're looking forward to that. I'm thinking of texting him on Twitter and just being like, "Hey, bitch, sorry I didn't see you at Bonnaroo. I'm seeing you next week though. Love you." Uh,
There we go. There we go.
so by the time this episode comes out, you
By the
will know
time you
whether or
see
not.
it,
By the time
Jen
you
will
see
have
it, you will know
Bonnarooed.
whether or not Tyler the Creator replied to me on Twitter.
Be like, I see you there, bitch.
Pride's happening this weekend in Kentuckiana, so
Very
Nat-
true.
we're gonna see Natasha Bedingfield, who we were supposed to see at Bonnaroo.
Speaking of pride, what?
Yeah, she's headlining our Pride Festival. Oh yeah, last year it was Chapel Roan, which she Chapel Roan definitely signed that deal before she started really, really blowing up because
Yeah.
tickets to that festival are like $12.
Oh shit.
And you get to like see all the music, do all the
Chapel Roan
things.
is for the proletariat.
This is easily the cheapest I will ever be able to see Chapel Roan ever in my life.
You'll get to tell your fucking kids about that, like
I
Jesus.
will. I will tell my children about the time I saw Chapel Roan for $12 at a Pride festival, which the day afterwards she played at Bonnaroo and was like the biggest crowd that Bonnaroo has ever had
Ah,
for a single performance. Because
it's nice that we
everybody at that campground pulled up for that set.
it's nice that anyone can still have that experience because it truly does feel like to get your money's worth these days, you literally do have to completely empty your wallet and forego all of your disposable income to, attend what was it that was like the most recent story that I'm trying to think of? Maybe I think it was the Beyonce tickets that were just like fucking so
Oh
obscenely expensive.
yeah.
And I was just like, oh man, fucking miss me with this shit. Like I would love to see somebody like Beyonce live, but not for that much money. Fuck no. I would have to sell one of my goddamn kidneys.
Anyway, let's get into the content of the episode. Let's start with our first album that we wanted to review this week. The new album from an artist that we shouted out in our all-time best MCs video, which is a sentence that I'm going to repeat for the next segment. First one is Little Simz's new album, Lotus.
Lotus.
It's not been too long, all things considered, since we've heard from Little Simz. We got a 10-track album from her at the end of 2022, No Thank You, which we talked about in our greatest MCs video. I loved No Thank You as a kind of supplement to Simbi. Sometimes I might be
Hmm.
introvert, but more and more No Thank You, aside from Sideways, which my God, the mix on that song still hurts my ears. That album has grown on me immensely, and I liked it a lot when it came out. I thought it was very underrated when it came out. It's tight. It's got like half of the songs are 6 minutes. But
Hmm.
it's not a long album. And so what I loved about No Thank You is it felt like and especially in the context of Lotus now, No Thank You feels like a strange middle chapter between an album that really broke Sims into the mainstream and an album, Lotus, which we'll actually start talking about now, that's dealing with a lot of the ramifications of Sims going mainstream
Hmm.
in very, very different ways. And I want to just go ahead and get this comparison out there because initially I was afraid to make it, but now I like can't help myself because I've been listening to so much of these two next to each other. Lotus is Little Sims's Damn. Like
I was gonna say the exact same thing. I have it written down right here. Yes.
I'm just gonna come out the gate with it that if Simbi, and it's honestly a fair comparison, that if Simbi is her To Pimp a Butterfly, then this is Damn, where you have the first two tracks coming out in a very confrontational tone in many respects that establish this as an album about reckoning with a kind of newfound self in a way that has been very interesting as somebody that's been listening to her music for the better part of this decade to grapple with because it really does seem like, and Sims has been very open about this, that this newfound level of fame has kind of taken some tolls on her as a person who wants to be like a real respected artist, but also as a person who wants to do good business in this industry at a time where it is not easy to do that coming out of the UK, especially. Like she has been very apologetic about the fact that she may never tour in America just because that's not profitable right now. Like it just isn't. And she is not at the stage where she can afford that kind of loss. And me, as somebody who wants to see how the economy of music affects music itself. I've talked about this a lot with how I talk about country music on the show. With Sims, especially, the fact that internationally presenting your music, at least in the States, is just kind of generally unsafe, is not a
I
good
mean,
position to
with
be
every
in.
passing week, it gets more and more true.
And so this album is very much about Sims kind of dealing with her legitimacy being challenged after Simbi and No Thank You attempt to blaze a trail for her. What happens when somebody sees what you're doing and decides to challenge you on it? You know, maybe you're not all that. What do you do when you're institutionally and critically challenged a little bit? And what you do with that is that you make Lotus. Like, I'm not even gonna front. I love this album. I really, really, really love this record. I think it's fantastic. I definitely like it more than No Thank You. I'm not sure that it's ever gonna reach the heights of Simbi for me, but I don't think it needs to be what it should be for Sims.
I really couldn't have said a lot of that better myself. I'm right there with you with basically all of it, honestly. I've loved watching Sims blow up because ever since the album that came out before Simbi, it really feels like she's been on an ascent and realized that she's been on that ascent and really taken advantage of it, but simultaneously has never compromised herself. There's another release that she had between No Thank You and this that I think came in the form of an EP, which was this very odd kind of experimental blend of different sounds that wasn't received like super well, but it's just one of those one-off releases that an artist feels like they just kind of have to make to almost get it out of their system. And it feels like all of the frayed edges from that EP kind of find solid form on this album, which sounds, I mean, it does borrow a lot of sounds that she would explore like earlier on in her career, but I think that right now, this is an album that feels like it sits in a distinct place sonically in her discography. And it also takes advantage of the fact that, like, it is sort of a retrospective on her own career, her kind of looking back at herself in a weird kind of like, I see this and Damn spiritually akin to each other because it's like an artist that sort of goes forward on their career trajectory and then arrives at a point where they exist in a liminal space where they're observing their own career and they kind of get a like take a moment where they get to go outside themselves and sort of comment on themselves in a kind of meta-referential way. And I'm making it sound like this is a little bit more complicated than it really is because one of the great appeals of this album is just how immediately hard hitting it is. Not in the sense that it's like, hard beats that knock. It's more in the sense that just like the sense of rhythm on this album is buoyed by the fact that there is so much psychedelic bass heavy. There's like, again, deep bass lines all across this album, very spacey production that feels like it's trying to sort of carve out a physical area where music takes place rather than just designing a specific beat. Like everything about this album sounds vast and wide, but Simz herself as a presence is like a scalpel. Like, for example, on the opening track, Thief, which is this really bizarre blend of influences that manages to coalesce in a really interesting way. But like, she's recontextualizing the word thief and how it relates specifically to her and her career, and, just like kind of playing in with a lot of double meanings and whatnot, and specifically how it relates to her. And she is displaying such a command of language that I found so captivating on No Thank You. Like, that album to me, like, it does sit in a kind of awkward transitory phase in terms of like albums, but in terms of just like raw quality, that album's writing is like second to none. I was so excited to see where she would go from a record like that, where she could kind of make something that's a little bit more structurally, I guess, sound. And this is literally exactly that. It's kind of got a sound that harkens back to her pre-Simbi era, where it's a little bit less like big and grandiose, and it's more about, I mean, I hate to kind of put it like this because it sounds a bit dismissive, but it's a little bit more about the vibe this time around. But like, that's not to say that this album is super like high-minded all of the time. Like on the second song, Flood, it's a really kind of cheeky, forward-facing, aggressively British song that like, it's confronting, it's disarming, it's really, really funny. She's very funny normally, but like, it feels like on this album in particular, she'll throw in a couple of barbs there that really make you laugh to kind of, I guess not to cover up, but to sort of get you through some of the more emotionally challenging parts of this album, which it kind of has in spades. There's a song on here, Blood, near the end of the album, that is kind of replicating what looks to be like an actual real argument that she had with a family member, specifically a brother who's also a musician. And it's about their conflicting careers, their relationship, their life paths, how they've diverged, their familial issues, and what they have, in common, and how they've treated specific family members. It turns from an argument to an understanding throughout the course of the song, and it's like, it's really beautiful. Like, it's show-stopping on both accounts. Like, I love how both performers on this song are like, they're really restrained cadence-wise, and they reach an understanding, but it's only after like genuinely trying to move past what's immediately in front of them. So, like, reconciling some genuinely awful shit that the both of them have between each other. The final like line of this song, the "I only phoned you because I needed a friend," was like, oh God,
This is
ow.
what we talk about when we talk about like acting being a core component of music at certain times, because these two put on a great emotional showcase of what they
Mm-hmm.
have been through. It doesn't feel, and props to, not to keep making comparisons to this man and his music, but props to
I
like We Cry Together
exactly.
for more or less. I keep wanting
But
to like
well,
complicate my
see,
comparisons to Kendrick's discography.
but
And
you're
I'm gonna
still you're
stop talking about it eventually because there's more to this. But
You're not wrong though. But I feel still like she's kind of taking that little torch of like the storytelling kind of aspect that Kendrick is emphasizing. But on here, I would argue that what she does here is she takes that idea and evolves it, because I think that like Blood is also just a like, it's a better song than We Cry Together, but it also kind of suits the same perfect. Not that I'm shit talking We Cry Together. That's a great moment on a great album, but this kind of feels like she is not compromising the actual songfulness of what she's doing for the conceptual aspects. It doesn't feel like one is hurting the other, sacrificed for the other.
yeah, in the same way that like I don't know, we talk about this with like Olivia Rodrigo and Sabrina Carpenter. They're good actresses, and that's what makes
Mm-hmm.
parts of their music work. Sims and her brother on this track, they are acting.
And
Like
doing an incredible job.
there's a lot of understated moments of very intentional delivery of certain lines on this that really elevate this as a moment of legitimate drama that
Mm-hmm.
make this song really, really work. But what I really got out of this album was a sense that Sims just really wants to shed a lot of toxicity. I feel like that's part of where the album's humor comes from as well, because part
Mm-hmm.
of being unbothered is being able to tell a few good jokes. And like I remember I didn't listen to this song before the album came out, but when the
Mhm.
song Young dropped as a single, I remember hearing a lot of like hullabaloo about like what the hell is Sims doing with this song, da 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 da. I'm like, what do you mean? She's being funny, right? She's making her
Yes.
version of like Kids or like a Truffaut movie or some shit where just like, yeah, I'm a whack ass British youth who's up to no good, and I express that through my medium of choice, that being, kind of low to mid tempo jazz rap.
No, and it completely works. And that's not like I think the tonal balance is maybe the most impressive thing about this album. Like there's still points where like the song Free, for example, feels like Little Sim's like British grimy take on like Outkast's So Fresh and So Clean. Like there's so many hip hop reference points that do distinctly feel like they are filtered through her very UK kind of adjacent sound that make it feel really unique, especially like in the modern landscape of what like modern hip hop sounds like. There's not a lot of records I can point to that have this specific kind of coalition of influences. And one thing I really love about this album is that like it's kind of like the most recent JID album in that like oh my God, this person can sing. Like the
Hell
sung
yeah.
vocals on something like Peace, like oh, they're fantastic. Sims like sort of pontificates like the limits of where her power as an artist and as a person can take her and why those limits are actually a good and like healthy thing. Like it's sort of taking a step back and being like the fact that I can recognize my own limitations of myself and my work is not like a flaw. And I feel like within hip hop, a genre that is built on braggadocio and about, making yourself as big and as untouchable as possible is like it's both refreshing and it's like necessary if you want to have a kind of longevity. And not to mention, we also have the work of Moses Sumney, the harmonies and guitar on this song.
God,
Oh,
man.
like I love Moses Sumney. Like whenever he pops up on like basically anything, I'm all for it. This is no exception. And another one of my favorite kind of contemporary soul artists also pops up on here on the track Lotus, Michael Kiwanuka. Absolutely expectedly completely fucking beautiful, gorgeous. It is also some of the like that song in particular is great because the feature gives it this really elegant kind of beautiful elegiac quality, but Sims herself by contrast is like this is some of the tightest and most impassioned rapping she's ever put on tape. Like she focuses on what makes her specifically stand out as she's in a world where she's surrounded by expectations and figures that kind of unfairly paint her into a corner. And the final 2 minutes that are just like an extended instrumental soul jam. Oh, I love it. I love that we are in a place where so many people in hip hop are creating albums where it feels like they are creating environments as much as they are creating music. And I know that sounds kind of woo-woo and wishy-washy, but like when you're able to make your album feel like it has a sense of place, that goes so far with me. Like that to me can buoy like an album that has distinct weaknesses, but frankly, this album doesn't really have many. I truly think that this may even be like her second best album, right up there next to Sometimes I Might Be Introvert. And the best thing about it is that its appeal is not like anything she's made so far. I don't think that anything kind of strikes the balance of being this kind of self-aware and kind of interrogative, but also just kind of forwardly entertaining and full of momentum. Like it's an album that manages to be super holistic and again, it has no real distinct weaknesses. I maybe would have liked to see a bit more like narrative or maybe like a more distinct through line, but even then that almost feels like it does what she is doing here thematically a bit of a disservice because I feel like the kind of fractious nature of it is a bit intentional, kind of like it is with Dan.
Yeah, I mean, the fractured psyche of newfound notoriety, newfound fame, newfound trauma, even. There's multiple songs on this where she deals with the effects of dealing with abusive personalities, both in the industry and in a place that seems more emotionally close to her. I want to zoom in on Peace for a second, because it
Hmm.
feels great to be a little bit vindicated by seeing one of your favorite rappers in the game compare herself to peak Lauryn Hill while interpolating MTV Unplugged.
Yep, yep, yep,
She
yep, yep,
she
yep.
did that for me.
She did that for the both of us. I'm glad that we have someone like Little Sims to kind of embody the sort of like when you go back and you listen to, peak Lauryn Hill and stuff, you can only lament like, ah, damn, it's a real shame that this didn't develop into like a more, substantial and long-standing career. And with Little Sims, it's like, no, we have people carrying her torch that makes it feel like that was not the loss to the artistic community at large that it could have been because of people like her.
No, people like Sims, and I said this about a couple artists in our top MCs video. People that are kind of carrying the torch for classically oriented jazz rap. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? That's a flavor that I've been missing for a few years. The people like Sims and people like McKinley Dixon, who we're going to talk about next, keep giving me back in spades in a way that is like, oh, these people like saw the roots and saw Lauryn
Hmm.
as the blueprint for how to do hip hop forever. And we need people like that. We need people who like traditional instrumentation, who like the big band composition. And I can honestly tell that Little Sims has a lot of love for like British rock bands.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, obviously her performance of Feel Good Inc. went viral for the BBC Radio 1, but
Feel
just her
good.
clear love of bands like Gorillaz really factors into an album like this, where you feel the instrumentation contributing to an emotional space in a way that like a standard flipped sample just wouldn't do for something like this. That's what I loved so much about No Thank You is that there is a lot of like traditional instrumentation on there
Yeah.
that builds the beats of the songs. And you get that here, and I love that we have artists like Sims who embrace the live band as a key component of a like hip hop ethos, right? It makes it feel more in a kinship with musical movements like jazz that brought things like hip hop to the forefront back in the day. Once you take the instrumental stylings of jazz and apply different vocal, deliveries to it, you get something new and it doesn't feel new anymore because it's in the 90s or anything, but Sims carries the torch of what made that feel like something fresh at the time and continues to evolve it with just incredible musicianship and incredible lyricism. Also, shout out to Alongiar, who's basically the guest MC for this album. Who I
Basically,
I need to listen to more of his stuff because after Simbi and after this, I'm like, I need to get deep into this guy's discography.
the last thing I'll mention is that like the final song on here, Blue, does a really great job of being like the summary song, the kind of thesis statement for the entire album, where it kind of ties everything together. And it's a song where Sims kind of talks about how like the idea that perspective is transitive, which is a huge burden to accept in a time when like, many people in the modern world are hell bent on obvious destruction in one form or another, and they kind of lack the foresight to realize this about just the sense of perspective. And Sims is great on it, and naturally in this album's tradition of taking some of the best modern like soul and R&B musicians, we also have Sampha on here, who of course provides a lovely bed of vocals for this song that feel like it feels really at home, I guess, with the combination of sounds on here. It's like it's again like between Sampha, between Michael Kiwanuka, it's like it feels like she had such a clarity when assembling all of her collaborators for this album, and with that sort of her taking on that torch of the jazz rap production, it feels like she also remembers that jazz is a collaborative art form, one that is reliant on many different people doing many different things, and it feels like she allows a lot of people to come and sort of be substantial guest stars on this album in a way that doesn't fully take away from her, but also showcases that this album is versatile as all fuck. I mean, this thing is a positive like delight to listen to. It sounds slick, it sounds expensive, and it is like it doesn't ever like get bogged down in itself. It is just again like Damn, it is just its forward thrust is just so fucking fun. You put it on and an hour just disappears from your life.
I love this album. I'm putting a strong thumbs up on this thing. Speaking of jazz rap,
What a fucking year for hip hop it's been so far. Like,
what
I
a good
mean,
week it's been. These two
I,
albums dropped on the same day, and we immediately locked these in as our picks for this episode.
I mean, we had to. Like, literally, two of my 10 favorite MCs ever decide to drop on the same day. It's like, yeah, we've been covering a lot of hip hop on this show, but hey, it's still the dominant commercial force in music, so it is what it is, man. But I'm also never gonna miss an opportunity to talk about people like Simz, and of course, I'm never gonna miss an opportunity to talk about somebody like McKinley Dixon, who I think the first time I ever talked about them on the Jams and Tea podcast, were you not there on that very episode when I talked about listening to For My Mama and Anyone Who Looked Like Her?
I was there. I was thinking
That's
about that
right.
too, which we
Th-
never gave a formal review of Beloved Paradise Jazz, or I don't even think you even mentioned it on the
we
show.
did. It was in a roundup where we were doing like a bunch of reviews together. But
That's right.
my love for McKinley Dixon goes back to again For My Mama and Anyone Who Looked Like Her, which as it stands is still my favorite hip hop album of the decade right now. And I gotta say, ever since I discovered that album and like went on the show and was like, no, you guys don't understand. This guy has it, and you need to get on this shit. I have never in my life felt more vindicated for an opinion because immediately afterwards, McKinley drops Beloved Paradise Jazz and like really explodes in online circles. Like For My Mama got a lot of people's attention. It got, a lot of really favorable critic reviews. I know that people like Spectrum Pulse were really pushing McKinley Dixon forward to the conversation online. And I was like, I hope that he's able to continue the momentum that he's had so far because his first kind of two album slash mixtapes were a little bit more independently made, independently released. But like now he's actually like, able to more distribution. He's got a bigger audience, all that kind of stuff. But I was like, I hope that he can continue this. And with that album, a sub 30-minute long album that is like partly a conceptual take on the works of Toni Morrison was able to completely captivate people and just like absolutely win them over. And so naturally, I was like, all right, yes, let's go. Let's keep this up. So I was anticipating his next album, waiting with bated breath. But at the same time, I was also like, I don't want to unfairly put too much of like my expectations on him and on this album because, everybody can stumble. Like, I don't want to set him up for failure. I don't want to set myself up to be disappointed just because of how much I loved his previous two records. So I was like, I kind of approached this one with a little bit of apprehension because, you can only continue making amazing shit for so long. Like, eventually you're going to stumble just a wee bit. But I was, secretly hoping, fingers crossed. And, I, oh my fucking God, this album is so good.
So
Oh my fucking
Magic,
God.
so
Oh,
Magic Alive is the name of the
bro,
album. This
dude.
album is a concept, more or less a concept album about a story about a little black boy who comes back from the dead and figures out that he has the power to make other people come back from the dead. So if Beloved Paradise Jazz, right, is McKinley Dixon's interpretation and interpolation of the works of Toni Morrison, this is his attempt at a grand narrative album, right? Focusing on a literalization of the generational effect of Black hope and Black suffering
Mhm.
as a way to explore this kind of newfound generational struggle. What you hear all throughout Magic Alive is a reckoning that McKinley takes with The ideas of jazz, the ideas of rap at their most fundamental level, the ideas of his own music with the way that he brings in some old lyric stylings of his into the mix, as well as this ability to be a curator of great collaborations in hip hop community. There's more features on this than any of his previous works. This is an album about feeling some kind of inevitable, unstoppable potential energy to bring people together, both in the character of the reincarnated black boy and in McKinley himself, where he is able to craft such a fucking insanely exciting narrative of spiritual perseverance that listening to this music feels like your soul is being cleansed. I I love this album. And one thing I love about McKinley, and this happened with Beloved Paradise Jazz too, this guy makes sound for the summer. As like
Mm.
thought out as his albums are, I associate Beloved Paradise Jazz, and I'm inevitably going to associate this album as well, as I just started my summer job last week when this album came out, with summertime. And
Hmm.
with all the unique like drawbacks and challenges, but also the unique opportunities that come with this seasonal time of the year. Because for context, I'm gonna get a little bit personal here. I have spent the past two, now my third summer, working at a summer camp here in Louisville for public school kids who want to improve their math and their literacy a little bit. But we also just like have fun. We bring a little bit of camp vibes into the mix. We do some summer camp stuff. And listening to that album for the first time, or listening to Love in Paradise Jazz, excuse me, for the first time while I was like out on the football field with those kids. I felt like I was a part of something gigantic. And I'm gonna feel that every time I put this album on when I'm at work, which is gonna be often. This album makes you feel like you're a part of something greater. Amazing feeling. And it communicates that through a lot of deeply thought out lyricism about McKinley's place in his world that is partially by his design and partially constructed by the great artists and the great people in his life that came before him.
If I measured the quality of an album by purely how good it made me feel, which frankly not really far away from the actual truth, then this gets full 100% marks because putting on this album feels like an act of self-care. Like this album has made me feel just some of the most unbridled joy that music has made me feel in years. Like straight up, like no qualifiers necessary. I listened to an interview that McKinley did with Anthony Fantano the other day. And he was kind of like they were talking about like the album and stuff. And like one thing that he mentions that kind of came up in conversation was the inevitable comparisons to Kendrick Lamar and to Pimp a Butterfly. And I want to take a moment to kind of retroactively apologize for the fact that I absolutely have compared McKinley to Kendrick in the past a lot. And it kind of seems like that comparison ruffles his feathers a little bit, understandably, because To Pimp a Butterfly is such a jazz rap monolith that if you are in that space, you kind of inevitably get compared to it. And it doesn't necessarily have much to do with how actually like in common you have with Kendrick or with that album. And it's kind of like, it's subsuming a little bit of other kind of like artists and other albums and stuff. I really more made that comparison in the past to relay the appeal of McKinley and rather not the style of McKinley, which is more based around like again, I feel like McKinley operates closer to the abstract hip hop. Like we have people on here like Quelle Chris, for example, who I feel like McKinley is a little bit closer to the orbit of. But in terms of people like if you haven't listened to his music before, if you do enjoy the music of somebody like Kendrick Lamar, for example, I think that the overlap of appeal is like a circle, like it's the exact same. But the difference here is that McKinley is such a more community oriented, more like I don't want to say that it's like more personal because that's just blanketly not true. But there is a sense of scale that McKinley adds to his music that never sacrifices its sense of intimacy. There is such a homespun feel that comes from his writing. It is just so immediate, it's so hard hitting, but also he is such a technically gifted rapper. It's like I can't describe what feeling, like what listening to him is like, because it is in fact so singular. He is able to do so much with so little. And in terms of just raw sound, in terms of what his music sounds like, this to me is his peak right now. The actual sound of Magic Alive is otherworldly. When I was talking about how the this Little Sims album kind of, created spaces, this feels like an album that transports you into a different world. Like, again, it is a flawless summer album experience on songs like We're Outside Rejoice, for example, where it sort of begins with this extended kind of instrumental, more jammy, spacey thing. And it is just, you feel like you are, like the sun is hitting your face. You feel like you are lying down in a beautiful green meadow. And frankly, when I got to listen to this album at where I work, where I kind of get to like, basically it's a really like rural area where there's like lots of like rolling hills that I get to like drive around, and like, I get to work and it's like around like sunset time, and like listening to this, like it truly felt like I was convening with the spiritual. Like honestly, I don't care how fucking like gobbledygooky that sounds, because it's just fucking true. But this album is like it's not even that much longer than something like Beloved Paradise Jazz. It's 35 fucking minutes, but it's fully immersive. It's fully transportative. And what I love too is that it takes sort of the idea, like you mentioned, of like influences on McKinley, and it puts that to the forefront. And he's able to bring in collaborators, like I mentioned, Quelle Chris, who he's a really big fan of, so that he finally gets to collaborate with. But I think this actually comes to a head in a really interesting way on the final track, Could Have Been Different, which features the rapper Blue, who, if I am disappointed in myself for anything over the past year, it's the fact that I didn't fucking mention Blue in my favorite MC's video, because I really fucking should have, because of albums that I love, like Below the Heavens and shit, because I love Blue's music. But the fact that he got in contact with him and sort of like, actually, like, this was sort of part of the interview where he was talking about where he got in contact with Blue, and Blue sort of brought a bit of continuity to his guest verse at the end here by referencing all of McKinley's sort of album titles. And because he literally does have a poster of Blue in his room, and in the verse, he references being like on the wall and looking at him in it. And it brings this sort of idea of influences to a head. And like, this is an album that deals with a lot of darkness, but it deals with it by dispelling it immediately. There is lots of, references to, black trauma, death, suffering, just like, all of the things that you would expect somebody like McKinley to talk about. But it is done in such a way that it fully adds to the pace of the experience. And like, this is one of the best paced albums I've listened to in a long fucking time. Like, it feels like it takes just enough time with all of its songs. Like, if I had any problem with Beloved Paradise Jazz, it was the fact that I was like, I want more, man. And like, yeah, this is only 7 minutes longer in the grand scheme of things, but it feels like a more complete statement. And in fact, it makes me retroactively like Beloved Paradise Jazz even more than I already did, because of the way he puts it, in that he's like, he doesn't necessarily believe in the idea of like individual albums like being completely, in a vacuum in terms of like his discography. It's just more gradual evolutions of the same person and the same ideas. So I was able to kind of recontextualize how that album kind of fit into his discography in a way that made me kind of appreciate it a little bit more, but also appreciate this as an evolution of what he was trying to accomplish there before. And like, there is so much color in this album. Like, what I love about it is that McKinley Dixon's on his freak shit on this album. Like one of his biggest influences is the producer Black Milk, who people will probably be most familiar with because of Black Milk's collaborations with rapper Danny Brown in the past. Black Milk is responsible for some of the most crazy fucking beats on something like Atrocity Exhibition. And on this album, man, like, yeah, it's spacious, it's beautiful, it's got that live band, jazz rap, rootsy kind of vibe that his music has that I find just like utterly sublime. But also, there's some production choices on here that are goddamn insane. There's songs like, I think it's FFOL, where no, it's I think it's All the Loved Ones. All the Loved Ones that have these drum fills that have like gated reverb on them like a fucking 80s pop song. And it sounds incredible. It's fucking awesome. The
Yeah.
texture of this album is gorgeous, man. Like shit like Crooked Stick. What the fuck is going on the beat of this song? I can't answer that question, but I know it slaps like a motherfucker. It's
It
so much
all that whole
fun.
song sounds like the part in Sunglasses where before it shifts, the jazz musicians
Yeah.
kind of start slowly falling apart and getting more
Oh,
discordant.
yeah.
Except the whole song sounds like that, and it's great.
And fucking this motherfucker comes out with a sequel to like one of his best songs in the form of the like mid-album centerpiece Run 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 Part 2, which like, that was probably my favorite song other than Live from the Kitchen Table on Beloved Paradise Jazz, and manages to one up perfection on this fucking song. Like it's beautiful. I love the way he kind of weaves in and out of that original melody and kind of evolves it into something that sounds kind of completely different by the second half of it. And like the fucking collaboration choices on here, hit after hit after hit after hit. Pink Sifu on this album coming through with an awesome verse. Ice Cold Bishop, who I've never heard before, is doing some weird shit with their delivery on All the Loved Ones, and I wouldn't have it any other way because it's again, it's so singular. It's crazy that this is an album that takes from a very kind of tried and true jazz rap template of things that came before it, but yet nothing sounds like this album when you could account for it like in all of its totality. I truly can't find like a one-to-one comparison fucking anywhere. It feels like McKinley has like talked about the fact that his like albums are in terms of their sound are like really highly collaborative. Like he'll be working with, a gospel choir or a live band, and he's like, I rely on the opinions of other people a lot because, I'll be like, hey, this sounded great, but like one of the musicians will be like, hey, I this is out of tune. I know you can't hear it, but I can hear it. And he's like, well, if you say it's out of tune, it's fucking out of tune. Let's run it back and do it again. And that level of quality control, it really shows through here because this is something that like it feels so refined. It feels like somebody slaved over every single second of this 35-minute long album, and it manages to feel like such a complete statement. Like normally when you have albums that are kind of sub 40 minutes, inherently I'm like, no matter how good you are, I want to be inside this world for longer. But every time I hit Could Have Been Different, man, I feel like I've been on a fucking journey. There is a crystalline clarity to this album's intent, to its execution, to its momentum. I haven't been more like floored by an album so far this year. Like if you ask me at the moment of just like, what is like, if you're comparing this to his other work or even like the work of, adjacent hip hop acts in this decade or whatnot, it's just like if I toss out For My Mama and Anyone Who Looked Like Her, if that wasn't my hip hop album of the decade, I'm telling you right now, this fucking would be. I think it's as good as that album in completely different ways and for completely different reasons. But in a sense, I think that makes it stronger, that it has different strengths, that it just sort of shows that McKinley's a more versatile artist than people probably gave him credit for when that album came on the scene. And like, I honestly, this is my first 10 of the year. I think again, it is concentrated joy. I put this on, the whole world disappears, man. It's
Hearing
beautiful.
hearing McKinley evolve so much as a storyteller and as a collaborator through these three albums is so fucking great. As you hear him like really reckoning with his childhood and early teenage years and For My Mama, You hear him reckoning with his kind of new adulthood and beloved Paradise Jazz. But now with Magic Alive, he's projecting this like storyteller wisdom and this effortless sense of collaboration. Obviously, a lot of effort went into this album. But when you're listening to it, it feels like it just all comes into being immediately from nothing. The same way that the supernatural powers of the main character do, right? Where just the act of, and the story kind of represents this as well, where you have the act of his friends that kind of survive after what happened to him, doing this kind of incantation to conjure him back to life. But then
Hmm.
as soon as he's back on the scene, he's like, no, I've still got like all the magic and I can do all the things. I'm just gonna start resurrecting a bunch of people and bringing the block back together in like a generational cycle of immediate resurrection. It feels like the opposite of one of my favorite books, Jason Reynolds' Long Way Down, which is a very spiritual, it's told in verse, and it's all about this kid who gets on an elevator with a gun as he's going to go shoot somebody who shot his brother.
Hmm.
But the whole book takes place just in how long it takes him to get down the elevator, and different like spirits from the past enter and like deliver messages to this protagonist. And so
Book
Magic
sounds awesome.
Alive
I should read that.
Magic Alive feels like the opposite of that, where instead of it being a generational story of the systems and the behaviors that lead to continuous like doom and gloom, instead it's no, this one miraculous act is going to like save the block. It's going to save the community, and you fucking believe it by the end of like, yeah, we are outside. Rejoice, rejoice.
it it's it is a phenomenal testament to just the idea of perseverance, the idea of survival, and it does it with like I mean the writing on here is brave in ways that I truly lack the faculties to even articulate. I think if I could describe this album in one word, uh, to like effectively distill what it is that it's unburdened. McKinley himself even was kind of like talking about how albums like For My Mama and Beloved Paradise Jazz, about how like For My Mama was him working out really complicated feelings about, his past, where he grew up, who he grew up with, and like the death of a close friend of his. And with Beloved Paradise Jazz, it sort of feels like an attempt to reckon with a lot of work that has influenced him and kind of, operating as a cipher of that philosophy and how it relates to him specifically. And this album is kind of him getting to unlatch from the idea of being bound by personal trauma and being able to make art and like construct a narrative that feels like it was the result of pure 100% undiluted creativity and nothing else. This is the album that somebody makes when they are at a point in their career when they have the young, hungry enthusiasm of a newer artist, but also the experience of somebody who's been around the block a couple of times. And this specific little curation, it feels miraculous. There is so much love in this album. Like every fucking bar, every fucking line of it, it is something that like hit on a level I did not think possible. Like I was always afraid of the fact that it's just like when you latch onto like the early work of an artist, like there's always the unfortunate specter of the fact that like, they may never live up to how much you love that one specific project ever again. I do not have to worry about that with McKinley Dixon. Just straight up do not. Give this man the entire fucking world, because what he's able to accomplish so far has been nothing short of like inspiring. I find this dude like I kind of feel ridiculous that I lowballed his placement on my favorite rappers list purely because he only had like the two sort of like more traditionally released albums. Now I would say he's in my top three with a fucking bullet.
Hell yeah. Obviously, major thumbs up to this album.
The biggest
Something
like
that,
album
something that
of the fucking year, baby. Again.
definitely album of the year, because right now my top is perverts, but that's, technically an EP, but it's like an hour and a half long, so go fuck yourself.
And hey,
But
we're getting more Ethel. We're getting more Ethel here soon. That single that dropped for I Love You Willoughby Tucker,
la
Nettles.
la 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 la, I haven't listened.
All you need to know is that it's one of her best songs. Like it's fuck. Music
Before we,
is good, you guys.
music is
Music
good
is
again.
good. I love music.
So before we get into my segment of the show proper, we wanted to really quickly drop our kind of mid-year check-in lists. So let's really quick do our top five movies. I'll start. I've got Sinners, Presence, Mission Impossible, Den of Thieves 2, which I fucking loved and surprised me a whole lot, and then Mickey 17. What do you get?
Uh well, at number one, I have Sinners, and I haven't seen a whole lot of movies this year, but let me just say, Sinners is gonna be it's gonna be tough to beat considering the gap between one and two here. But other good movies, I do have Soderbergh's Presence at number two. Really cool gimmick in that movie going on. Really tight David Koepp screenplay. Go check that out. Number three. Mission Impossible. Jen and I saw that together. We had a great old time. I think it's a pretty big step up from the last Mission Impossible movie, which I enjoyed, but felt like it was kind of encumbered by a lot of odd structural and expository choices. For Mickey 17, I recently watched this with my fiance, and I've been kind of showing her some Bong Joon-ho movies. We watched Memories of Murder a couple of weeks ago. Masterpiece, baby. But
Hell
Mickey
yeah.
17 is the exact kind of movie you want a director like Bong to make after they get a shitload of money and acclaim from making a movie like Parasite, where they just go all out on some weirdo shit and are just like, I mean, if this is going in theaters, let's make it weird, bitch. And make it weird he did. And the last of the top five here is one I really want to shout out because it is a movie that got it's a much smaller, like more independent movie that not a lot of people have gotten to talk about. It is the movie called One of Them Days. And it is a film that stars SZA and Keke Palmer. And basically, in my review for it, I said like one of the highest compliments I can give a movie is that it would make a great double feature with Blind Spotting. And this absolutely would. It does not have the dramatic heft of a movie like Blind Spotting, but it kind of makes up for that fact by being an intensely charming and very well written comedy. Like it is a very fun little movie. SZA is amazing in it. Like Jesus Christ, can that woman fail at anything? Like there are so many people who are so fucking multi-talented these days that I'm like, can you fail at something to remind us that you're still human? But like her and Keke Palmer have such unstoppably great chemistry in it. Go seek that movie out if you haven't gotten the chance to yet. It's a very fun little movie. Really great stuff going on there.
I
Uh,
should also give props to that one because that one is my number six. We saw it in the theater. We loved it. One of my greatest compliments I can give a comedy is I could watch that again tomorrow, and I absolutely feel that way about one of them days.
ha has maybe the funniest boner joke in a movie I've seen in some time. I was in stitches at this fucking movie. It's great stuff, really great stuff. And naturally, if you are a appreciator of pretty women, you'll
You're
do fine
sold.
here. You'll
You're
do fine.
spoiled. All right.
Embarrassment of riches, truly.
Let's get into the main events. We're going to start with my pick for this week, which is Miranda Lambert's 2016 album, The Weight of These Wings. I've been doing a little bit of reading up on Miranda Lambert to get prepared for this recording. So I want to provide a little bit of context as to where this album comes in because
Please.
we are talking about a very interesting time in country music because we're kind of transitioning, or we're starting the struggle to transition out of the bro country shenanigans of the early 2010s. I even went back and watched, if you're familiar with the YouTuber Grady Smith, his first ever video, Why Country Sucked in 2013, is one of the great
Ooh.
pieces of montage I've ever seen on the internet.
That was a dark fucking time.
It's so funny. It's so good. But country music in 2016. was going through a bit of a cultural renaissance because, yes, in-house, the early 2010s were very good for country music because you had bands like Florida Georgia Line and Sam Hunt and some up and comers that were doing very well by injecting a little bit of genre fusion in there, injecting a little bit of pop, injecting a little bit of hip hop. The problem that Florida Georgia Line and Joey Moy by extension caused is that everybody wanted to sound like them for a few years. And so Florida Georgia Line became a nadir because it felt like they were the original sin of a gauntlet of hellish music that was coming
Yeah.
out for a couple of years there. But also, something that I felt like was happening, and I alluded to this a little bit in the Morgan Wallen segment we did last time, is that country albums, the stock was going down
Hmm.
because Taylor Swift had left the circuit by then. She had gone out of her way to insist that like Red is a pop album. Red did not appear on the country charts, even though a couple of singles appeared on country radio at the time. And so we ended up with a bit of a dry spell for like monumental albums. Obviously, we still had the Academy and the CMT Awards awarding things like Album of the Year, but two albums that I'm going to generously describe as the product of singles artists. People like Jason Aldean,
Hmm.
people like Little Big Town,
Hmm.
Brad
God, that's a
Paisley.
name I've not heard in a long time.
Brad Paisley, the band Perry, people who were
Oh
putting out
man.
people who were putting out good singles that did a lot of mileage, but were not putting out albums that started any conversations.
Hmm.
But then one night in 2015, the world was properly introduced to a long beard by the name of Chris Stapleton. And
Hmm.
Traveler made the idea of an album important to country music again, and
God
thank
bless it.
God,
Chris
thank God.
Stapleton's presence in modern country music is one of those things where I'm just like, thank God the commercial aspect of this genre still has some genuine lifeblood in it.
And I don't want to give all the credit to Stapleton because that same night, Eric Church did win Album of the Year for Mr. Misunderstood, which I feel like is another example of like the big country album becoming legit again
Hmm.
because Mr. Misunderstood did very well. But our artist that we're going to be talking about today is a darling of 21st century Nashville named Miranda Lambert. And we are talking about a very interesting moment in her career because Miranda, even as successful as she was right out the gate, was on the up and up. Every album that she put out after her first one got more success, got better singles that charted higher, that made her even more of a household name. Her album before this, Platinum, which isn't looked upon as fondly as the rest of her discography nowadays, which probably correct. Not great singles on that one, not perfect, but that album did very well and continued her upper momentum. She won Album of the Year from the Academy that year. She won the Grammy for Country Album that year off of that album, Platinum. And then something happened.
Divorce!
Divorce, baby!
Oh no!
She got a divorce from Blake Shelton, who they had made a slight attempt to make their marriage a show biz darling with songs like Boys Round Here, which featured her at the time supergroup the Pistol Annies on charitably vocals that I would call backing. Even though they got a full guest credit for that song at the time.
I did not know that she was in the Pistol Annies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
wow. I like that very separate entities in my mind, so that's just like bad me for not knowing that.
That was an interesting time in her career because she had gotten married to Blake. She'd just gotten that big album. She wanted to do this super group with Kelly Pickler
Mm.
and oh fuck, who's the other one that's in the Pistol Annies? I feel bad that I don't remember.
Oh shit.
I'm Googling it right now. It's okay.
That's
Ashley
what
Monroe.
editing's for.
No, I said it wrong. It's Miranda Lambert, Ashley Monroe, and Angelina Presley.
Oh, okay, okay.
And so the Pistol Annies kind of flopped after their well, they didn't kind of flop. Their albums all did very well, but after the first one, they were kind of a flash in the pan. Their first album did very well, but that collaboration with Blake, I feel like tanked the group a little bit. It made them seem more disposable than they wanted to be.
Mm.
Thankfully, they did give way to a country supergroup that I really hope comes back again, the Highwomen.
I
I
was gonna
need
say they feel like the precedent for the Highwomen, which we need a new album so
I
bad.
I need another Highwomen album
Amanda
yesterday.
Palmer, please, please.
Please. But anyway, um, so the weight of these wings is very much Miranda's response to her divorce from Blake, which was tabloid heat. They were all
Mm.
over the press. There wasn't like anything and either of them would get canceled over.
No
It was
smoking gun.
There's no smoking gun, but it was very much like a Bennifer type of fallout where it's
Mm.
like you could never believe that these two people would break up, and
Ah.
nevertheless they do. But there's no like scandal. So it
Mm.
became a thing that was very difficult to process for a lot of
There
listeners.
was nothing to blame. There was nothing to point at and be like, ah, yes, that was the thing.
Exactly. And so the weight of these wings ended up being a very unpredictable sort of album. And I want to start this out by talking about the fact that this album is not really a divorce album. Like
Yeah, not really, honestly.
it
Like, I
is
mean,
in the
it is.
timeline, and many moments on the album are very much emotionally informed. And I would even say
Yes.
the construction and the release model of the album is informed by this change in Miranda's personal life, and no doubt her wants to evolve as an artist in the wake of this. I
Hmm.
guarantee she was feeling some amicable feelings about her ability after both her divorce and the Pistol Annie's kind of having a sophomore slump. And so this album being a big double album that was going to be a big return to form for her and a big return to the spotlight because she disappeared between Platinum and the divorce becoming public info. And she intentionally put this album in a kind of off season where it came
Hmm.
out in 2016, but not in time for it to be a big contender for any like awards or big like end of year conversations. It would end up winning the CMA Album of the Year award the following year, but that was after it was like a good 6 months out of its release.
Oh wow. I really respect that. Good on her for actually making that choice. I know that that's a risk that not a lot of artists in her position would be willing to take.
It seems I don't know a huge amount of the intent behind it, so maybe I'm reading too much into it, but just based on some dates that I've put together and trying to research for this episode, I want to believe that this was intentionally a way more intimate showcase of her talent and what she wanted to put out at the time that was nevertheless adopted because she was an industry darling already. And all the
Hmm.
better for it, right? This album absolutely deserves its flowers. And we don't in the circles that we run in, we don't get a lot of talk about good country music. So what I really wanted to do with this segment was throw back to an album that next year is going to hit its 10-year anniversary
Oh
and
wow.
just talk about a great fucking album from a time period in country music that's gonna probably be seen as a little bit overall negative.
Hmm.
But for me, looking at the late 2010s, this, and again, albums like Mr. Misunderstood, and the continued success of people like the Zach Brown Band, who at the time were making
Hmm.
albums that are more in the vein of stuff that I want to see.
Yep.
Um, we're continuing to show that there's still a lot of good work to be found in the mainstream Nashville buzz, which kind of nobody who talks about this kind of music online ever wants to admit unless they're being paid by Nashville. But Jake, I've been waiting for you to listen to this album for years. Please tell me what you thought of this.
Well, my familiarity with Miranda Lambert before this was approximately nothing. Well, I will say some of the Pistol Annies had definitely like gone by me, but as I have just pointed out, I didn't know that she was in that band. So really, like I had only heard of her because of this divorce. Like that was the first time I ever remember hearing her name. And like it was right at the era of just like the country music that I grew up listening to was distinctly more of the like 90s, early 2000s. But like the thing is that that's the music that I was reminded of most when listening to this album, and it made me feel right at home, mainly because this album has some major uh Dixie Chicks, now known as the Chicks, energy. Their album Fly is an album that my mom had in constant rotation. For those of you who don't know, that's the album that has Goodbye Earl on it. You probably have heard that song in one form or another. But that album's energy, I feel like, is the spirit of it feels very present in something like this. But I was still like, I took take a look at this album from the outside looking in, and I'm like, all right, this is 90 minutes. It's a double album. It's 24 songs, 12 songs on each side. So I on the one hand, I was like, this will be this will be a commitment, and I'm gonna have to steer this ship through it. But at the same time, it is like 30 minutes shorter than that Morgan Wallen album. So you know what? Doesn't really feel all that bad. But so I listened to it. And the first thing I want to say about this album is that for a record that came out when it did, the most surprising thing about it for me was, man, this album sounds incredible. Like shit, man. Like this is the production of country music often is not something that is in the popular conversation, mainly because it's really only talked about when it's really bad. And when it's combining a lot of different styles and a lot of different things that just either don't go well together or just don't suit the material or feels kind of misaligned. But like from the start, from the very first song, Running Just in Case, which I do want to touch on, um, it is very apparent that the actual sound, the sonic texture of this record is something that was put like the utmost thought was put into. And like Running Just in Case, the opener on here sets a beautiful precedent for the rest of this. The production is immediately the standout. There's like layers of ambience that kind of kick the song off, and it leads into like the proper sort of beginning of it, and it feels so like there's lots of subtle instrumental, purely textural details that you would not imagine would be on a super commercial country album from the 2010s. It's just not the first thing that you would anticipate. But the other thing that comes out and is another immediate standout is Miranda's voice. Wonderfully complemented by like all of the effects that are on here, but she's just like a very talented vocalist, like off the bat. And like this song is structurally, it's a little amorphous, but it's in the name of accomplishing a kind of wide sort of, it's a song that just projects the feeling of freedom. It's like freedom and like more distinctly like liberation. But there is like the formlessness, it goes from being something that might distract someone to being like, oh, this isn't as like tightly structured as like a country pop song that I might anticipate. And it becomes the biggest strength of the song. And like I love the completed line where like the title pops in. It's not love that I'm chasing, but I'm running just in case. It's like it's such a great way of doing something that Miranda is phenomenal at on this album, which is saying more with less. That like she's able to say just as much about the material in her songs by what she purposefully leaves unsaid by what she does say. And I real like no bones about it. Cards on the table. This album is fan fucking tastic. Like truly, I had a great time with it. Especially like I think that the first disc of this is like some of the best popular country music, like structured together that like I've heard, period. Like Highway Vagabond after that is like
Good.
this song has swagger, man. The bass line is killer. This
Oh, it's
thing
so
is
good.
it's rollicking. It's got this travel oriented kind of nature of the song that made me think of all things. This song made me think of like Modest Mouse. It made me think of 2000s indie rock. It made me think of the Lonesome Crowded West, not only in its like sound and like twang and muscle, but also its structure and like the way it's actually written, which again, I did not expect to go into a Miranda Lambert album and come out with a Modest Mouse comparison, but here I am. The guitar around 2 minutes in is something I never expected to hear on a country album. The guitar tone on this is fucking wild. It sounds
Tons of great guitar tones on
weird.
this.
It's great. I love that. That texture is amazing. And also another element on this song in particular, which is great, is the drumming, which is great all across the album because we owe that to the session work of Matt Chamberlain of Pearl Jam, mainstay, like modern session drummer who we've talked about him a lot on the Jams and Tea podcast in the past. This dude, like, has no off switch. He comes, gives it 100 every single time he pops up on this album and does any kind of work. It's exceptional stuff. I also really love that there is like a through line narrative going on here, not necessarily a concept or a like, ABC thing kind of thing, but the flow of the album is taken into consideration very strongly here, and that it does feel like a very consistent character portrait. Like we see that kind of going into Ugly Lights, which is a song about like it's basically just explicitly about Miranda's relationship with alcohol and how it's kind of slowly turning her into a bit of a mess. Like there is still though so much joy in this song. Like the vocal filter on here makes it sound like she's performing at a bar, like a live. There is a like
Yeah, they got a little bit of like
microphone.
a speaker box feel in her voice.
Yes, it made me think of the Menzinger's album Hello Exile, which also kind of blends a sort of Americana thing and uses this production technique to kind of feel like you're in a bar where this punk band is performing. It is like the song itself is sloppier, but like in a way that reflects the material, in a way that I think sincerely makes it better. It is literally in every way. This is a guide on how to make one of these songs that someone that like Morgan Wallen would do well to learn from, in that it conveys the tragedy of alcoholism, but also, key point, the appeal of alcoholism, in that it has allure to it. It has escapism. It is like, yeah, you get to get drunk in a bar and have fun and go out with your friends and feel alive and shit. And it's like, you get to see a more well-rounded portrait of this issue because she's able to bring it a little bit more dimension. It's not always just like, misery, awful, blah, 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 which you can do and you can make work, like as we talked about in that last episode. But here it feels like there is a fleshed out dimensionality that Miranda Lambert, regardless of whether or not she end up like penning the lyrics in a given song, is able to curate it in a way that feels like if she didn't, then it feels like she did.
Ugly Lights is
The
also just a highlight for me because I love a song that'll pick what feels like a classic country vocal melody. Like
Oh
the way
yeah.
that she sings on this song feels like a way that people have been singing for 100 years
I was
that has
this
never gotten old.
feels
The
like it
little
got
like
plucked right
when
out
they
of the
start the
60s.
verse and they do that little dun 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 dun, like that's
Ooh,
classic shit.
ooh, it's no, it has like the timbres on here are so distinct. Again, that production, it really never lets any of these songs down. And then like after that, you have a song like You Wouldn't Know Me, which is a song that is about like the barriers that Miranda is putting up, either as like a preventative measure on her part or as a way of just keeping her from being like emotionally involved with a new person that she might meet. And like it's really curiously written and it kind of evolves into something that has a lot of momentum. So it almost brushes past you that this is a song where she's putting up these walls around herself. and as such is kind of slowly losing her sense of self. Like you have to pay really close attention to some of the writing on here, but she tells the subject of the song that you'll never keep up that way, but never says how to keep up as a counter to this. It's like I love how like songs like this let some of these instrumental passages just breathe. Again, like not to keep going back to it, but it is a good reference point of what not to do in the terms of like that Morgan Wallen album. One of the biggest problems with it is that structurally, not even just as an album, but the songs themselves, there was never moments where they take time to let the instrumentation just breathe and just kind of exist and let passages go on for a little bit longer, which this album is not afraid to do at every single turn, and it just makes the album feel more well paced. It's not a da 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 da. It's a da da da. It adds a structure to it that makes you, it buoys you through the experience and makes it just way easier to process. Like this man, like it sounds like $1,000,000. Like the guitar work at the end too, fucking great shit. Like it's really really good stuff. And after that, we should be friends. This where did the groovy drum and bass that starts off this song come from? Again, something I never would have expected to hear on an album like this. But it is also, this is a song that is detailing like the kind of women that Miranda seems to gravitate towards being friends with. It's very fun, it's very cheeky, it's very cleverly written, and it shows that Miranda likes to be in the presence of flawed people. That I can judge the cover because I wrote the book is the line I take away from this song as being like, oh, it's really killer. It says a lot about her state of mind at this point. And you have like these kind of songs that feel like they are a little bit cheekier, are a little bit lighthearted, but they always couch something that's like essential to this album's narrative within them, like on Pink Sunglasses, which is maybe the most irreverent song on the album. And
This
it's
song
like,
is so
again,
fucking sexy. Oh my
oh my God,
God.
the guitar tone that starts off this song, man. Oh, it's seductive as fuck. Like it is like the conceit here is that it's her putting on sunglasses, not just because she likes how she looks in them and that she feels confident, but because they make the world look better, which is like, again, classic country song conceit here of just being like, the sunglasses make the world look better because she can see less. She's purposefully putting horse blinders on herself. But again, this sentiment is like underneath the general tone of the song, which is again a bit more flippant. But like that's what I love about country music is that it has this kind of emotional dexterity to it at its best moments where it always couches something essential within moments that don't necessarily feel like they are super vulnerable or super revealing. But if you dig a little bit deeper, if you pay a little bit closer attention, you can tell that like, oh, there is something here that's not just supposed to be like, oh, this is just a fun little song.
Yeah,
Like
like there's a secret to the pink sunglasses that is ultimately tragic, but nobody would do anything like wear cheap pink sunglasses all the time if it didn't feel fucking great to do.
yes, she
Like,
feels like a different person when she wears them. She's guarded by the change in appearance that she gets, and she even feels liberation in being able to roll her eyes at people without being judged or seen by anybody else. And it's like, I mean, relatable sentiment, honestly. Um, and then
Positive
curious moment.
plastic.
Curious moment on here. The song Getaway Driver. Now, I know this song is very much doing a gender flip here.
you can say
It's kind of
it.
look. I listened to this song before I had like looked up anything about it, and I was just kind of like,
You can say
Miranda.
it.
Like there's a little, and like like obviously she's still writing from the perspective of a man, but like the like regardless, this song, like it sounds romantic. Like it's like the synthesized strings at the start. Oh man, beautiful, beautiful stuff. And then like the more morose tone of it is like a really nice switch up. And there's like a nostalgia to it that factors in the perspective of seeing someone like Miranda on the first part of this album that like sort of flips how you've been seeing her this whole time on the record as being like someone who is like definitely down on herself, but she is coping with it and like moving forward, and like she has agency in her situation. But this flips it and is just like somebody who cares about her is kind of the subject of the song, observing her from like a third person perspective. And it's like there is a kind of quiet tragedy to it, and that this person has some emotional insight into somebody like Miranda that doesn't immediately make itself apparent to her. And it also is kind of like subtly enabling her behavior, their sort of participation kind of with her. And it adds an extra layer when you consider that this song is co-written by, I think, who would later become either her next or romantic partner or husband. I'm not sure about that, but like she was romantically involved with the writer after this, I believe, which makes a whole lot of sense. I can't remember his name, but one of the credited writers. Um, and then after that, you have like a bit of a turning point in the album, because like it's kind of pivoted emotionally a little bit with this song, and you go into a song like Vice. The key line of which being, "When it hurts this good, you gotta play it twice." Love
First
that line.
time, the first time I heard this song on the goddamn radio, hearing the little needle drop at the beginning, I knew I was in for something different. And this, as not quite the middle, but definitely like getting toward the third act to the first disc, this was the
Mm,
first single. And so this
God.
set the expectation at the time that Miranda was going to do something really different. And this song is all about not just enjoying music, but enjoying kind of general debauchery.
Oh yeah. And on the note of like lots of instrumental choices on this album so far have been like really disarming for me, like just like listening to it and being like, wow, I didn't expect that. This is the peak of that right now, as one of like at the start of the song, there is a fucking Tom Sawyer by Rush ass synth line that happens after it, and I was just like, oh my God, the palette of this album is astonishing. Like, holy shit. This is like this regard like 2010s, 2000s, 2020s, regardless of decade, this is simply not an instrumental choice I would have ever pegged being on an album like this, but it is all the better and all the more imbued with personality for it. Like it is like this album has remarkable texture to its production. This is a song where it comes at like this is like the crash out point on the
Yeah.
album. Like as you said, sort of that turning point. It's woozy and hazy, and Miranda finally is like she's been really confident on like the start of the album, but this is the point where she kind of laments letting everything get really bad to the point where she can't ignore it anymore. It's kind of snowballed to a point where it's unignorable. And that like the traveling that she's been doing is because she doesn't like want anyone to actually know her or have any commitments that weigh her down, rather than just being like, oh, this is just kind of me being my own person. It's like, no, you're kind of bound to the fact that, you started this journey because you're fucked up and you can't really outrun that right now. And like again, the guitar on this song, man,
Hell
the
yeah.
apparently the dude who produced a lot of this, Glenn Worf, played guitar on most of this, is a real kind of like nuts and bolts Nashville guy who's been doing stuff since the 80s, including working with people like Faith Hill, very notably, I think is a good precedent for this album, and also somebody a little bit more classic and a little bit more tuned to like the instrumental side of things, like Mark Knopfler, which explains why the guitar work is such a like obvious standout on this album. Miranda sure can pick collaborators. Like that's all I'll say about that. Uh, and then there's like Smoking Jacket, which is a little bit more of a proactive song where she's kind of talking about what she wants out of a man, out of a romantic partner. And man, earlier we were talking about songs that sound seductive. This song is sexy as hell. Like this is showcases that like I another big foible of modern country music is that all of its attempts to be sexy sound awkward and clunky and shitty and bad. And then there's music like this where you're just like, oh, damn, she nailed it.
I want to
And
be the man with the smoking
I
jacket.
mean, fucking kinda. It's got like, and it has this like really steady beat, and like Miranda
Yeah.
really like lays on the sultry tone in her voice, and it feels really confident. It's like it's a song that's pure fantasy, and she lists like things that are often very contradictory about what she wants out of someone, which sort of further emphasizes her sense of like loneliness, of just like she doesn't fully know or understand what she's looking for other than it being not where she came from. This song specifically has a lot of Dixie Chicks vibes, which again gets along with me, hits me in my nostalgic core. And then pushing time, we get more continuity to this album because it kind of seems like Miranda has formed a connection with someone, though it's a bit tenuous. Like I love the way that she puts it is lonely ain't no place to start. It implies that their mutual want was born out of loneliness and not the desire to be in a relationship, and that she already fears the end as somebody who's like really prone to goodbyes, like she has been. There's like a nervous tension in the song that like is contrasted by the really soft layered instrumentation, which makes it work really, really well. The facets of this albums are often come from the fact that it'll be like the instrumentation and the lyricism will often be like, hand in hand, matching up very well. And then sometimes there'll be a really big contrast for a couple of songs that'll make you feel, the tonal disparity a little bit stronger. And it just makes the actual act of listening to the album in its entirety feel way more well paced and less monotonous.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
sequenced really well because you get those
oh, mm,
it gets those breaks in the tone before you get too used to anything. And
yes,
so you get that kind of
yes.
frenetic energy without the track list itself feeling disorganized, right?
Hmm.
Covered Wagon comes at a perfect time to
Oh, yeah.
kind of break the flow and make a big rockin' excited song before Use My Heart closes out the first disc on a much more tragic note.
Oh, yeah. That one, that's a song where Miranda's talking about how, she's got trouble with commitment and she can start things, but she sort of lacks the ability to, commit to a follow through. The macro of her issues on this side of the album is basically just this song. Like she's got a line that says, "I don't have the nerve to use my heart." It's a great line because the implicit suggestion is that she's clearly had to do it before and has been burned, aka the thing that set her off on this journey in the first place, but only leaves that kind of up to an implication. And then that's the first disc, which I think is like really tight, really well sequenced, just really great stuff. And the second sort of disc starts off with Tin Man, which is a really clever song conceit of Miranda envying a quote unquote Tin Man, man without a heart, because he has it easier than her, which is a sign of growth on her part as she seemed to start her journey as someone closer to being this Tin Man than where she is presently. I love the ghostly synths on this song and the vocal
Yes.
harmonies. Like stunning. One of the best sounding songs on the entire album, and that's not an easy task, frankly. And this sort of general second half of the album is a little bit more like melancholic, generally speaking, tonally, and it sort of progresses into that very smartly. Good Old Days is a song where she kind of this whole thing starts to like wear really thin with her kind of previous traveling escapades, and she sort of asks God to make the road end, but like so she can be forced out of the complacency that she's in. Like I love that idea of just being like asking for someone else to end her journey for her because she lacks the resolve to do it herself. And so like even her wishing for the southern breeze to knock her down, it feels like a tacit admission that she just longs to go back home where she started this originally. And um I love the line in a song like Things That Break, "I was born a bull in a china cabinet." That is a Jason Isbell ass lyric if I have ever heard one. Like
There's
that feels
so
like it
many
would be
lines like that where I'm just like, you're saying some insane
it,
shit.
it sounds
I love it.
like
One of my
some
favorite
drive-by truckers shit,
Yeah,
actually.
one of my favorite lines on this album is actually on Pink Sunglasses, just because of the way that she says next to the disposable cameras.
That's so good. It's the details. It's the details that always make the writing in country music, good country music anyway, makes it always exemplary. It fills out details. It's like, it's always kind of things that are generally innocuous on first listen, but you go back and you're just like, no, these details inform a greater portrait, that these details become essential into understanding what this album is actually doing. And like, she like on this song, she kind of details her aversion to just the idea of fragility and impermanence and how like her lack of commitment stems from just fear of not wanting to, see things end, of seeing things break because again, that's what got her here in the first place. She's clearly inching towards wanting some kind of commitment, but of what kind, whether it's to a person, of a place, she doesn't quite know yet, but she's still taking steps. It's a really great way of showing progression. Like she's clearly further off than when she started on the album, but she's also not quite at a definitive conclusion yet. And then there's that, like, near the end, there's the sort of addendum to a line that's like, because somebody once broke me, which, like, oh, man, like the fact that she is so unwilling to actually talk about that instance in which her heart was broken, that the details regarding it are so scarce on this album. Whenever they do pop in as like, I mean, maybe like the actual breakup that it, starts this album sequences events is maybe referred to a total of 5 or 6 times across 24 songs. And it's like it's the Jaws approach. The less you show something, the more effective it is when it does pop up. And the rest of the album's writing buoys it substantially, so that doesn't even like matter that you're not constantly hearing about it. It very smartly averts the idea of being solely a country breakup album. It is both definitely that and also a hell of a lot more than it. And that's kind of what gives it its singularity for me. Like there's also a song that like I know that like it seems that songs like this are like people at large generally like them a little bit less, but there's a song like For the Birds, which I actually really like. A song where kind of Miranda is very candid and very kind of like crass almost in her lyricism,
Yeah.
and she just kind of details the things that she values in a living environment. It starts off with like, seemingly innocent enough and is mainly about aesthetics, but she almost pushes back against this when trying to say that she's against things like pain and tears and not willing to accept that what she needs or has to do for her self-betterment will actually require sacrifice. It's a fun song. Like there's another line on here where like earlier in the album I was like, Miranda, what is this fucking, she's got a line on here that's
I'm for
I'm for
girls
the
with the curves and the
I'm for the
curve.
girls with the curls and the curves. And I'm like, Miranda, is there something that you want to tell us? Like we're listening.
It's a
We're
very cheeky song, and that's kind of
Yeah.
why I love it. Like, the way that she just like half-assedly says, "I guess I'm anti-hate," is so
Hmm.
funny.
It's
It's like,
so
oh,
good.
everybody's anti-hate. How do you say you're anti-hate?
If
But I guess I gotta say it.
if I can circle it back to a comparison I often throw, is that this is this album's Michael Keaton from Weston Kelly's The Weakness, where it uses like a really absurd, silly song conceit to still drive home its emotional core in a way that makes you laugh and also go, "Oh fuck, that's actually kind of dark." But
Yeah,
like
well,
it's
it's like
great.
at the end of the day, it is about, right, wanting to be in nature, wanting to be kind of separate from the political toils of the world, which on an album like this is a thing that might exhaust me normally,
Hmm.
but she does it in such a way where it doesn't feel like she's taking a break to be serious. It feels like she's projecting something a little bit more complicated there, where it's
Well,
like,
and
what do
also
I do?
it's just not subject material where like it doesn't really warrant an explanation that goes much further than that considering what this album is about. It would feel like it's just a bit of an also ran on an album that's writing is so focused and airtight and precise. Um Precise writing being beautifully exemplified on the song To Learn Her, which I listened to this, and this feels like a thematic extension of one of my personal all-time favorite country songs, that being Tammy Wynette's Stand By Your Man. And it's about the concessions and faults that you have to make and accept within a relationship with realistic expectations, both for yourself and both for your partner. And it leaves it a bit open-ended at the very end with the some things you just can't learn, which kind of point towards her being uncertain that a potential partner will be able to handle her now that she's changed this much, but still more certain that she is capable of like being loved, of like finding someone who can appreciate her for the person that she is. And Keeper of the Flame, I think, is a really curious moment on this album because it's a song
Yeah.
about Miranda's relationship with the idea of music and the idea of writing music, which I'm a sucker for this kind of fucking song. Like the idea of artists talking about their own relationship with their writing, and specifically country music, I always feel like the inherently complicated sociological strata of country music lends itself to this topic in a way that feels a lot more intimate and interesting than it might in any other genre just at face value. But like it's sort of about her keeping a sect of tradition and culture alive with the purpose of trying to help and guide other people like her. Which, it's a genuinely like a really nice sentiment that sort of details her ethos in making an album like this. It's her determination throughout the record that seems to be her strongest quality, that she kind of wants to be like, hey, this is the thing that you've got to take away from this. Like this is what you should interpret from this, and this is why I do what I do. And it's like, yeah, that actually makes me respect her a lot more too, because, I'm not saying that everybody who sings country music has to be a dirt poor coal miner who sings about how shitty everything is all the time. But it is nice to know that people, even in a commercial space, are like, no, I'm doing this for the sake of tradition. I'm doing it for the sake of I want something about this culture to be passed on in a positive way.
Yeah.
And
And then you have Bad Boy,
the the
which feels
false
like the end of
start.
the album.
I love the false start in this song so much. It's so cute, man.
You get that big guitar hit. She gets halfway into the first line. It's just like, wait, what's the line again?
Oh yeah. Oh
It's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
I
funny.
love that. I love that. It like that uncertainty from her being like, wait a minute, it sort of carries into like the song is about her like could be read as her like wavering and falling into old habits, but honestly, it kind of feels like Miranda is finding a kinship with this bad boy in the sense that it's kind of an extension of herself. Like he keeps to himself and keeps his walls up. And generally, her description of him feels like how she described herself on the first part of this album. And so this song serves as a really good litmus test to show you how far as her like a character in the album, how far she's come because of her distance from this bad boy, but also her kinship with him. And I think that's a really clever usage of a device within like this structure that makes it's like a progress marker
Yeah.
for like her writing. And again, it's really smart.
It's like I
Uh
said, this feels like the end of the album. And
oh
then
yeah.
you have the heartbreaking
Whew.
coda that is the last three tracks. You've got 6 Degrees of Separation, which I just love the title of this song. Like I get that
Hmm.
it's taken from the play, but it's just evoked so well in this with the image of like finding an old coin and being
Hmm.
reminded of somebody that you once knew is so, like only country music can pull shit like this.
And
And that's
immediately
why
you're
I
like,
love it.
oh God, been there.
I went to college with
Oh,
somebody. I went to college with somebody. Her uncle is the guy that wrote that play.
oh my God.
Yeah, she told me that like a couple weeks into us knowing each other, and I was like, "How the fuck did I not put that together? That you're related to that guy that wrote that play?"
Funnily enough, I actually like this is a weird tangent, but I actually had this thought where I was just like, I actually went to middle school with the granddaughter of the person who invented the heart monitor, and I was just kind of like, what the fuck got you in the middle of podunk ass Kentucky? What fucking like, get the fuck out of here.
Small world. But anyway, you
Yeah.
got 6 Degrees of Separation, which feels like an immediate cycle of regret that would come after the wild night that you would have after writing a song like Bad Boy. This is the morning after that goes wrong.
Ugh. And look, this is a song where, like, it's about how you can't stop thinking about someone because it's easy to connect everything to said someone through degrees of separation. But what really gets at it is that this sort of song conceit is like, this is a form of obsessive compulsive disorder that honestly I have actually really struggled with in my life, where you cannot help but make associations with everything around you until you associate it with something bad, and that association like paralyzes you. And like I really felt this. Like I connected with this song as somebody who's just like in your worst moments when shit can like sneak up on you and you just want to give yourself a reason not to act or give yourself a reason to just not have agency. You just connect whatever you have to do to something bad that's happened to you in your life, and then you use that as an excuse to just kind of recede into yourself. And it's like that's a really relatable and kind of complicated sentiment, and I really appreciate it being on here. It's very eloquently expressed and very understandable. And like it makes the next track hit so hard. Dear Old Son is just this really simple penultimate song about appreciating the beauty of nature. I think it's a really strong sequencing choice, combined especially with what comes after it, because it's like she's able to disconnect from the hustle and bustle that kind of links her to the tragedy of, the heartbreak of her ex, and she can just kind of appreciate something simple. It's showing like development that she's not running away from issues. She is finally confronting them and she's kind of living in the moment. And then the final track, I've Got Wheels, is just this nice anthem of determination that ends the album. It implies that the journey is difficult and that she's ready to accept that difficulty, but what she's learned will aid her in her aforementioned journey. And it's like this album is such a perfect point by point. Like, if you were going to teach how to make a good double album in a class, I would use this album as a template the way you would use like fucking
12
Raiders of the
Angry
Lost
Men
Ark
and
as like
shit.
an example of a perfect screenplay in screenwriting class. It's just like this to me should be held aloft as an example of like what needs to happen when you go after structural choices like a double or triple album. You have to aid it, like you can't just jam a bunch of songs in there. You have to add something that guides the listener. You have to add elements that add to its pacing. You have to make it feel robust. You have to make the instrumentation not feel samey. And it's like every single mark that should be made in an album like this, Miranda Lambert makes it. Like there are, elements of it that I feel like, are a little bit more endemic of the time in which it came out. Maybe certain writing or like lyrical choices, but like at the end of the day, even though like I don't necessarily think that like I would give this like a perfect score as an exercise of what this is, yeah, it's perfect. Like it is something that seeks out to do something specific and to like have specific goals and is something that accomplishes the goals that it sets up for itself. Yeah, this is a runaway fucking success. I had a great time with this album, and generally one of the best like I, I've kind of had an embarrassment of riches listening to shit this week because I've had that McKinley Dixon album, which I've listened to in several different environments of just like looking at sunsets and shit and all that poetic nonsense. But like I did the same thing with the Miranda Lambert album, and it really made this shit hit. Honestly, like I'm really glad that I got to go and explore a sect of country music that like I do love country music and I love a lot of artists within it and a lot of commercially successful artists, but specifically this moment and this time and this artist is an example of the fact that like even in the worst trends, in the worst genres, there is always examples of how that they're being done right. And always examples of people who are holding up the tent poles of why those genres exist to begin with. So this is not only is this a two kind of thumbs up from yours truly, like as a recommendation, this gets the full 5 stars from me.
My first five. Let's go. Hey. Nah, my last word on this album before we transition is just that I got upset. This is one of the albums I got obsessed with during COVID.
Mm.
'Cause I actually did lock down for several months with my parents and my sister and my grandmother. So we were out in Western Kentucky, very rural area. And basically all I would do is that when I would get like done with school stuff, I would put in my headphones and I would go walk in the woods. And depending on how I was
Mm.
feeling, I would listen to Ginger, the Brockhampton album, or
God.
this. And that those are the two albums that I listened to exclusively for like weeks during the pandemic when I was not talking to any single person other than my immediate kinship. And that was how I
Right
just connected with the world at the time.
right before the podcast started, but like when COVID happened, I was in lockdown as well. And I remember I have so many core memories of just like my music choices of listening to shit then. It was like the literal like the day the COVID phenomenon happened was the day that After Hours by The Weekend came out. So naturally I was
Yeah.
spinning that. I was also, of course, listening to Brockhampton. It was the first time I had listened to Get to Heaven by Everything Everything. So that was literally like the album that we started talking about that was just like, hey, maybe we should start talking about shit on YouTube because we like talking about this fucking band. And I also remember we got to a point in that year where it was Jason Isbell dropped his new album that summer, and I was just like, I remember like the first time that I went outside and like walked around and shit was listening to that album just because I was like, I need a good country album to experience the physical world around me, and that's like. If you're just somebody who like, if you're a little bit more hot and cold on country music and whatnot, like I would truly say that like this album is a fantastic place to like get interested in it because it takes so many sonic notes from genres that aren't itself. It takes so many like actual like beats from blues and just general rock and even progressive rock in some moments. So like if you're somebody who's a little bit more like I don't know, you should totally give this album a shot. Its appeal feels like it covers every single possible sector. I truly like really great stuff. And in fact, like I'm very curious to explore some of Miranda's other like, bigger albums, even though this tends to be the one that people who were really big fans of her have latched onto sort of the most.
She's
Miranda
got
Lambert's
she's got
Southeastern, as it
great
were.
she's got great records.
She
I
does. Her
love
entire catalog is like really well regarded and it's like it's big too. Like I didn't know she had that many albums.
yeah. She's been making great records for a really long time. So she's one of those people that I will always like, no matter how big she gets, I will just always be like, more people need to be listening to Miranda Lambert, especially in the circles that we run in.
Oh,
Because if
for
you want
sure,
like
for sure.
if you want a good mainstream example of what country music can sound like when it's got the budget behind it and when it's getting
Hmm.
all the good publicity behind it from things like the Academy, this is where you go. She's an industry darling, but she is for a reason, right? Sometimes they get it right.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like they have to get it right occasionally in order to maintain success. Otherwise, they're just going to collapse under their own weight, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
So,
No. I gotta have a piss break, so hold that.
yeah, good idea. Good idea.
I okay, I'm gonna try to do something funny that Jake will notice later in the edit and decide to leave in. No, it's not happening. Maybe that's funny enough to get left in. It's not happening. I gotta save my
What are
energy for
you
the
up to,
segment.
you charlatan?
All right, you're gonna find it in the edit.
Okay. Well, we're here. We're at my recommendation.
I look appropriately not white balanced for a discussion of Doug Walker.
Perfect. And I am in front of a cream-colored wall. Perfect. This is a very strange recommendation. I will be the first to admit that, but there's kind of been a running theme through you and I talking on this channel and on this show about just the idea of formative media that kind of shapes us as people. And we talk about how, even really flawed formative media can end up being a really positive force in terms of like what you manage to take with you as a consumer of art and what have you. But on the other side of that, there are things that, maybe they don't have as many positive qualities in terms of a formative media sense, but there's also the idea of shaping your formative critical faculties, just because you and I are both people who, I mean, I would tenuously label us critics. We engage in the art of criticism frequently. We write
Trying my
about
damn
things.
best.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not saying that I'm any fucking good at it, but I am saying that I do it a lot because I like it. And the entire reason that I do is because I watched a hell of a lot of people on the internet who did it first and did it in entertaining ways, who, captured my imagination when I was a wee lad watching shit on YouTube. And one of the first people I ever remember paying any kind of attention to was the work of one Mr. Doug Walker, aka the Nostalgia Critic. And for those of you who don't know who this is or kind of weren't around for this particular moment, the foundation of YouTube is very interesting because it happened in like phases in how the sort of like dominant types of content being made would change every couple of years. Like for a couple of years, it was almost like Let's Plays were the inescapable form of consumable content on the website. But before that, I think the era really belonged to the idea of the reviewer persona.
Yeah,
And this was
the comedy critic, if you will.
it was mainly spearheaded by two people, that being James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd, and Doug Walker, the nostalgia critic. They both kind of came up around the same time and sort of just they dominated a particular landscape. The angry video game nerd talking about retro gaming, and the nostalgia critic talking about beloved 80s and 90s sort of childhood staples and like shows and movies and stuff like that. And kind of the idea behind this was a knowing and like sort of semi-loving but also semi-critical take on looking at things that from our childhoods or from childhoods of people who are a little bit more millennial coded, like that kind of age group. This again, the 80s, that sort of era, and then sort of taking them apart and then maybe occasionally looking at the less charitable examples of iconic media and then kind of taking them down a peg a little bit. And I do want to say off the bat that I do kind of find something admirable about this concept because we do kind of feel like we're still in a media landscape that is in the clutches of the idea of nostalgia. Like, I say this as literally two huge, enormous childhood staples of my own are currently being remade in live action or in theaters cleaning the fuck up right now in the
There's a
form of
new
How to Train Your
season of
Dragon.
Bleach still airing on television, Jake, that we're
There's
going to talk about when it finishes coming out.
Bleach is airing. Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon are in theaters. Like it truly is. We are just living in a repeat of the exact same decade that we experienced growing up, which not great. So I will put forth the idea of I appreciate people like Rolfe and Walker for being able to take a crack at a subject that a lot of people hold as being like sacrosanct in many respects, but looking at it for what it is and just kind of looking at pieces of media that maybe are a bit too, held aloft in terms of cultural conversations and whatnot. Like, we don't need to live in a world where people revere movies like Space Jam anymore. Like, we can kind of just collectively put shit like that behind us and be like, yeah, let's move on a little bit. But not to give them too much credit, but the basic idea here is that the nostalgia critic was that kind of presence of somebody who reviewed a lot of nostalgic media, and Doug Walker's style was very simple. It was a guy in front of a wall. He would sort of set up his ideas and he would review a movie, and clips from it would play. He'd make jokes about it, comment on it, criticize it, what have you. And this style became replicated basically everywhere. For every nostalgia critic copy, there are 40 people who copied that copy, and it became exponential to the point where this style of content almost became its own subgenre. And as Doug Walker had to move away from YouTube because of copyright, because he used video clips of actual movies that back when they were really cracking down on shit, and he had to be
So,
hosted on things like Blip TV, for example. But he had his own website that was called Channel Awesome, aka that guy with the glasses.com. Or if you were like me, you still watched him on YouTube because there was a YouTuber by the name of Leisure Suit Rant Fiend 2 who uploaded all of Doug Walker's videos to their YouTube channel. I cannot believe I fucking remember that shit. That has been literally a decade since I have thought about that username. I just drew that from the recess of my mind. But basically, this subgenre evolved to the point where Doug Walker's website was able to recruit other people who made content that was generally kind of close to him. This ultimately led to ballooning the success of people like Todd in the Shadows, who was, kind of a fledgling YouTube music critic who got absorbed into the channel Awesome bubble and then later grew far beyond it. See also Lindsay Ellis. See also
rap
the
critic.
Dom. See also, yeah, exactly. Brad Jones. See also like tons and tons and tons of people. And for a while, this looked to be a really interesting environment to create content in, just because it seemed like all of these people collaborated frequently. They'd appear in each other's videos, and they seemed to all be friendly with one another, and they would do crossover things. And like, it felt like there was a genuine community behind this stuff. And they would do things like make their silly little anniversary videos that were like these weird skit things that were mostly their own original plots that were mostly just ripping on plots from 80s movies anyway. And they're not good. Don't watch them, but
There's enough content about them that we're not gonna belabor the point on shit
plenty.
like Suburban Nights
Yeah,
or To
go
Boldly Flee.
go watch Lady Emily's videos on Doug Walker's content. Those are the best retrospectives of that man and what he did and his influence that you will be able to find. But they do very squarely focus on those elements of his content, not necessarily just his general review content. And I'm skipping over a lot of stuff just because I don't want to dwell on this forever and I want to actually talk about what I recommended Jen. But this kind of happened pre-COVID, so I think it's kind of been memory hold, but like I think Doug Walker is notably one of the few internet e-celebrities who has definitively been canceled and
Oh
survived the
yeah.
cancellation.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's
What
because
can
Doug
can you summarize change the channel? Because I have no
that's
idea what the fuck
okay.
happened.
That is precisely what I was about to do because what happened is that it became very obvious that there was something behind the scenes of the that guy with the glasses sort of umbrella that was weird because there was a while where it seemed like the Nostalgia Critic was going to be canceled as a show that was going to evolve into something else that Doug wanted to do called Demo Reel, and he like built up to the end of the Nostalgia Critic and like didn't tell any of his coworkers and friends that were all working on these movies for free, not being paid, not having travel expenses recomped and everything. They flew out to film shit with Doug, and then they just made these things. And then one day after To Boldly Flee, it was like, yeah, the Nostalgia Critic's over, which is really bad considering the Nostalgia Critic was the main draw of views for that guy with the glasses, which means that everybody else's content was suddenly going to like there was going to be less people like watching them. There were going to be less eyes on that. And this kind of ballooned into just this sort of online scandal where it seemed like this site was being woefully mismanaged by the people who were behind it, namely Doug, his brother Rob, and the owner of the company, Mike Michaud. There's tons of videos that you can watch that go into the drama of this a lot better. Go watch those. They will detail and inform you as to what's going on there. But mainly after one of the creators who went by the name of Jew Wario tragically took his own life, and then eventually some things came to light about this creator that have to do with bad things that I don't want to talk about here right now, and that kind of basically like everyone on the website banded together, released a Google document onto the internet of being like, we are leaving Channel Awesome, here's why. Like Todd, Lindsay, all of them detailing these stories of just like them being like woefully underpaid, mismanaged. Basically, all of their content was encouraged to be more like Doug's and less like themselves. And you go back and watch shit like Lindsay Ellis's early stuff, who people might not even be familiar with the fact that that's how she got her start just because of how big she got after she left
She's
Channel Awesome.
done very good at dodging it.
Oh yeah, like like you go back and watch her Channel Awesome stuff and it's like this is very obviously someone who does not want to be making the exact same kind of content as Doug, but is being forced to and has to stealthily kind of sneak her own personality into it. And it immediately shows you why this was such a problem because Lindsay Ellis or Todd in the Shadows leave Channel Awesome and then their popularity skyrockets. They become way more successful because they have way more freedom to do whatever the fuck they want. And naturally, Lindsay becomes like one of the most successful and just one of the best video essayists on the entire site and a New York Times best-selling author. So I think it's fair to say that Doug Walker and the management of Channel Awesome definitely held a lot of creative people back from their full potential for a very long time. And this is important because it shows you a window into the mindset of what exactly was being encouraged and the type of content that Doug was making. In that before the end of the Nostalgia Critic, that what was supposed to be, before demo reel, it kind of felt like Doug was always somebody who brought passion to the table. Like he was always somebody who, no matter how bad his criticisms could often be, how off the mark he could often be, or how unpopular his opinions may have been, he always seemed like he really felt strongly about it. And I feel like that's what carried him as far as it did, is that, in YouTube, there's so much shit that's made, and it's made by people who clearly want success more than they want to be doing what they want to be doing. And so, even though Doug shit isn't the best in the world, it felt charming. It felt homespun and it felt passionate. I'm being very generous with all of these labels here, mind you. But once Doug comes back after the failure of his series demo reel, which again, go look into that, and he had to revive the Nostalgia Critic essentially. And this era is very controversial in the sense that it is when Doug became, this is the peak of his popularity as an internet presence. But also, it's kind of when you start to realize it's kind of like Doug is just sort of covering shit just to cover it, not necessarily because he feels strongly one way or the other. And this
God damn it, I was gonna
ball,
make that point. Fuck.
oh, there's a much greater point to be made about it later on. Don't you worry. But
Oh,
like
certainly.
this dilemma of Doug talking about things that he doesn't really seem to feel strongly about begins to become a chimeric monstrosity where Doug's continued insistence that his opinions and that of the nostalgia critics are separate, in that they're two separate entities, they don't think the same things, and the nostalgia critic is a character he plays, and it's not endemic of his real thoughts and opinions on things. Something he, to this day, keeps insisting. And I am adamant that this kernel here is the complete undoing of Doug Walker. Jen, I have no idea what your experience with Doug Walker is, or even if you have any. So I want to know what your precedent was for this, and ultimately, what was watching these reviews, which I selected as being important milestones of Doug's that, for one reason or another, are notable because I think they have a particular significance, like in the AI video or the wall video, for instance, where it is like the peak of everyone becoming completely disillusioned with Doug and like just turning on him en masse. But like I picked videos from different sort of eras in the Nostalgia Critic, but also videos that embody different issues and problems that I have with Doug's criticisms that don't seem to be like, there's a lot of, The Wall, for instance, is a video that everybody kind of dislikes, but all these other videos, they're ones that like fans of the Nostalgia Critic are like, yeah, that's a good one. So like what tell me about what this was like for you, because I cannot fathom coming into this any shade of blind in 2025. Like truly, I've been watching, or well, not continued, but like I had been watching Doug since middle school. Like the very beginning of being on YouTube for me.
I should start by saying I've always kept the Nostalgia Critic at a kind of arm's length. Back when
Good
I
for
was
you.
in like middle school, high school, and really started getting really passionate about film and wanting to talk about it. And I was like, in my senior year in high school, I was making little review, like Chris Stuckman style review
Me too.
videos that I was posting of shit like fucking, I reviewed Incredibles 2, I reviewed fucking Solo. And
There's probably a review for Solo on this channel if you look back far enough.
yeah. Those videos are definitely my videos are definitely gone now. But
Don't watch mine.
I immediately gravitated more toward the straightforward presentation of people like
Chris
Stuckman
Stuckman.
and people like Jeremy Johns. And
Look, we all got to start somewhere, man.
it was
I was there
before we
too.
knew. It was before we knew.
I
Uh,
never saw the blackface video. It
I
took me a
didn't
long
either.
time to see that.
I didn't know about that until years later. I stopped watching that guy's videos just because I thought he was kind of dumb. Sure enough, but I always kept Nostalgia Critic at an arm's length, despite giving it a couple of tries in high school. The one that I really remember watching and not getting anything out of was watching his pre-SOPA review of the Tim Curry It movie.
That was my first one as well.
No fucking way.
Yep. It was because I hated that movie so much, I wanted to find someone else who agreed with me, and naturally I was like, ah, somebody gets it. I fucking hate this piece of shit.
Um, and the thing with Doug that's always kind of been a reason why I've never been able to really engage with this is that I've always been able to see through his bullshit. Just
It's
like
alarming how transparent it is in retrospect.
even as a stupid teenager, I was just like, why do you have to do all of this bad comedy to like couch your opinions?
The
I don't
overacting is
understand.
intense.
I don't understand why you feel the need to do this. And I want to point to somebody who serves as a positive example of what I think Walker is going for, and that's Scott the Woz, who
Yes.
criticism is always straightforward, always honest, always deeply, deeply, deeply felt and contextualized and well structured, with a bunch of like lighthearted, irreverent comedy that isn't a distraction or an extension of the criticism, but always in addition to it, because you can tell that's just like genuinely what his humor is,
Yes.
and that he likes making these things with his friends.
It
Like
comes naturally.
I loved his little like insane hour and 10-minute musical episode that he did during the pandemic, borderline
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
forever.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Stupid Nintendo game. Um,
See, that we can look back on, and I view that as really charming in the way that my teenage self found Doug's old stuff, and now I kind of find it kitschy and lame and overacted. But like, there is a good way to do this. There are plenty of people that Doug inspired that clearly took that mantle and ran with it in a way that I think just suits the form much better.
but for me, as a person who's coming here for the criticism first, there's just so much time that I spent for this episode watching stuff that I don't care about, that is not criticism, that even as a teenager I like recognized,
Hmm.
where like why why do you need to make up a fictional character that has a character arc to review Batman and Robin? Like, you don't
Uh,
need to do all of this. And the reason is abundantly clear. The reason, obviously, is that Doug is not a critic and does not want to be, but clearly saw criticism as a kind of gateway to being able to showcase his abilities as a writer, director, editor, performer. And even as a teenager, I was just like, but why? Like, you're half-assing both ends of the ass here,
and you
when
have
like
no ass.
I would much rather see the genuine development of whatever it is that you're trying to do with all this filmmaking chops that you're trying to show me here, and all these comedic chops that doesn't have to be couched in like shit that you don't care about, or that you maybe saw as a 10-year-old that you do genuinely get some catharsis out of going back towards. Because there is one example of this where I genuinely do like have to half-assedly hand it to him of this does seem like an example of something that he clearly had to work out his feelings about and
Yeah.
managed to actually get that through to the final edit.
Yes.
But the rest of it is just like you don't feel strongly enough about this to make me care. And that's my core component of like why I never fucked with Doug Walker, of why I never thought the Nostalgia Critic was a good idea. And it's something that I'm gonna continue to like espouse upon as we go through these entries. But let's just get into these. We got 5 videos to talk about. I want to start with Moulin Rouge. We're gonna do
Now,
these. We're gonna do these in chronological order. So this is like pre-reboot, but like right before the reboot.
to
Yeah.
set the precedent for this Moulin Rouge video, I would like to say uh, Doug's Nostalgia Critic content wasn't the only stuff I watched. He also made videos where he was not a character at all and just would like talk about film in like different contexts and various different like series on his channel. And one video he made, he basically talked about the videos that he was most proud of making. The Moulin Rouge video is his favorite video he's ever made, and I think that says a lot.
So the thing with the Moulin Rouge video is that it's actually nice that this is the bookend and the other bookend is the wall, because everything that's wrong with the Moulin Rouge video is essentially just a prototype for the wall.
Yep, yep, it's a dry run.
Where, yeah, where the entire video is just so needlessly complex.
Mm.
There's like a whole crossover storyline involving a half a dozen people who all serve as different like surrogates for Doug's opinions or cardboard cutouts of perspectives that he finds insipid
That's
or
the main one.
cardboard cutouts of things that genuinely challenge him, which is rare, but there's nuggets of it there amongst his oeuvre. He will sometimes find a way to launder opposition that he genuinely has a hard time coming to terms with. We're gonna talk about
Yes.
that in the next segment that we're gonna talk about. But
Mm.
the thing with the Moulin Rouge video is that it's just so embarrassing.
Ugh.
What's going on?
Can we
I
can
hate
we
that
can
I'm
we
already like
just
giving the game away and becoming completely baffled by this, but how, as a person who cares about criticism, how is this the mechanism by which you decide to express yourself
the
and how
medium is
you feel
supposed to be the
about
message,
anything?
and the medium here is what if I retold a parody of Moulin Rouge where I used stand-in characters as like artifices for my opinions and the straw men that oppose that opinion, and also it is in itself a musical where everyone is performing their musical lines. And I would really, really just like to point out that Doug does a lot of these little musical things throughout his entire career, and this motherfucker cannot sing. He can't, and he does a lot.
I'll say he can sing. The question is whether or not he
He
should,
should,
and the
and he
answer is
should not.
no. Um,
Mm-mm.
and so what really stuck out to me with the Moulin Rouge video is if what I know about how he runs his sets based on some change the
I
channel
have a feeling we're
testimonials
about to head in the same direction in this criticism.
that I read is if those testimonies are true, this should have let us know pretty
Uh-huh.
quick that this motherfucker does not know how to run a set. Uh,
Oh.
there's so much like terrible blocking and terrible editing
Oh.
and terrible sound mixing in this. Like there's one guy, I don't even know who this dude is, but he's the guy who's like, I'm the one who works for this website that talks about musicals all the time, and his microphone sounds 5 years older than everyone else's. I don't know how it happened, but these people work for you, right, Doug? Like you harassed these people enough that you
Buy
should
him
be
a
able to
fucking
get
mic.
buy him a microphone. Buy him a microphone. I swear to God. But the thing with the Moulin Rouge review is that I actually do genuinely respect a little bit of what's going on here, in that
Understandable.
Doug is a fundamentally incurious person, and that is a phrase that I stole from
Oh,
Dan Olson's video.
if you weren't
But
going to steal it from Dan, I was going to because it is the thesis statement about him.
But the thing is that he's constantly like trying, or not constantly, but in more than one of the videos that you picked for this, he's trying to figure out why he can't vibe with this stuff.
And the conclusion he always comes to without fail is no, it's everyone else that's wrong.
Yeah, or it's like everyone else has to grovel and just the Moulin Rouge video has such a funny ending because it basically ends on the two surrogates admitting that they don't actually like it all that much and that it's just a guilty pleasure, but everybody has their
and
guilty pleasures and so
and
you gotta
that
love it.
that was the point at which I, as a viewer, began to see through a little bit of the facade, mainly because I also watched Lindsay Ellis's videos a lot. and she had a video. I'm not even sure if it's even still available to watch. It was so early on, but she made a video of her 10 favorite movies. Number 5 is Moulin Rouge. And then I went back and watched that Doug review, and I was like, you know, it seems like Doug is not letting Lindsay say anything meaningful about why she likes this movie other than, well, it's silly, I guess, and that means that it's a guilty pleasure. And let me go right off the bat and say that, like, this is not an opinion I'm proud to hold. I don't like Moulin Rouge. I don't like Baz Luhrmann. I'm just not into his style. I'm not into the writing. I'm not into the editing. I'm not into. But the thing is, I would never call Baz Luhrmann like a bad filmmaker because like his usage of the technical aspects, it's like, yeah, you might not like vibe with it, but like it's edited that way on purpose. It's meant to be disorienting. It's meant to be overwhelming and gaudy and like, and Doug is like, why is it like this? And I'm like, well, of course you don't understand because you don't understand the medium is the message principle if it smacked you in the fucking face, dude. But like the one part in that entire video, that ungodly 40-minute long behemoth of a fucking video, the one
We're gonna
time where he
say that
comes
two
across
more times in this segment, that ungodly 40-minute video.
I'll say that about every video, regardless of its runtime. But the point at which I actually feel like there's something there with the Moulin Rouge video is, of course, the only time he compliments the movie when it's doing the tango sequence, when he actually talks about the editing and the lighting and why it's actually good, and he like begrudgingly is like, yeah, this is a really well put together scene. And it's like, oh, so you do know how filmmaking works. You just choose to not use it whenever you're doing your shtick.
Well, I don't think it's that. I think this is a larger problem with a certain school of early online criticism, which is that all of it implied this kind of search for this sort of universally perfect work
Yes,
that
yes.
perfectly pertains to my sensibilities, that doesn't do anything I find annoying or garish, or nothing that
It's a
I don't
rubric.
vibe with because of my personal taste. It's not criticism, it's a rubric. And so it doesn't meet the work where it's coming from. It asks the work to like
To come to me.
cater to the critical voice, which is not
Which,
what criticism is for and it's never been.
but when you're 12, it's really easy to mistake that for criticism because Doug has obviously absorbed what film criticism is and can deliver things like film criticism, but you go back and it's just like, but what are you actually saying about it? And the answer is not much.
Yeah, he doesn't know how to reckon with the fact that he straight up just finds the idea of Moulin Rouge repulsive. So he
Yes.
has to initially come up with all of these like criticisms for it that are only negative because he dislikes the element itself. Otherwise,
Hmm.
it's entirely descriptive. Like he has this bit in the Moulin Rouge video where he's like, "Let's try to find a shot that lasts longer than 5 seconds." And
It's
I'm
like
just like, but what are you saying? What are you
it's
saying about the actual construction?
you're
You're not
half
saying anything. You're just
it,
trying to express some kind of disgust with a particular component. And that's fine. But if that's all you do and that's all he does, that is not what criticism is.
well,
Like, I have gone out of my way. We've made plenty of criticisms of people that we know and love and understand the sensibilities of, like Mike Flanagan. We make fun of the ugly blue in some of these Mike Flanagan.
yeah. Yeah.
We make fun of the ugly blue because we genuinely think it's ugly and it doesn't serve anything very well. It
No.
doesn't serve the aesthetic. But Walker, if it doesn't serve his sensibilities, it's immediately like unreasonable that anybody would ever do it ever.
It is purely this is bad because it's different. Like it is truly like because this does not adhere to that like it's like the idea of the perfect screenplay is like the only kind of movie that exists and is valid in Doug's mind. It's like unless you do, a perfectly structured, perfectly arced, like very like traditionally stylized movie, if you deviate from that in any way, then it's like, again, then it's bad. And and I think part of the reason he kind of got away with this for so long is because, well, he couched a lot of it in the fact that he was criticizing old children's media. But as the Nostalgia Critic goes along and he runs out of old children's media to talk about, and he wants to talk about things that, well, let's be honest, have literally not a goddamn thing to do with anybody's nostalgia, then he starts showing his weaknesses in ways that like just become so glaringly obvious. Like, again, I'm not saying that Baz Luhrmann is like some esteemed high art director or anything, but like the work of Baz Luhrmann is not something that the Nostalgia Critic as a concept should ever be talking about ever. It doesn't, like, why? What's
It
the
doesn't
purpose
fit
of
the
that exactly?
profile. It doesn't fit the portfolio. You're
Mm-mm.
about fucking Schwarzenegger and Stallone movies or like uh pre-Disney Renaissance stuff.
Pee-wee's
You're
Playhouse,
yeah,
fucking like
you're about Pee-wee and Ernest and fucking
Jingle All the
Cobra.
Way, fucking like, movies that are kind of disposable by nature, like things with specific intent that aren't made as like corporate products. Like, it's just not something he seems to understand, but most key, he doesn't want to understand. Like, part of the reason art is cool is because it puts you out of your comfort zone. Like, I like it that most movies don't adhere to the same screenplay rules as Jurassic Park. I like it when things are slow or when things are hyperactive or when things are like you can't just take umbrage with everything purely because it deviates from your incredibly narrow-minded view of what something should be, even though if it did, like the version of Moulin Rouge that Doug likes is a movie that nobody else gives a single fucking shit about.
Right.
Nobody.
Nobody who likes movies like Moulin Rouge would enjoy Doug Walker's Moulin Rouge. I
Oh,
mean, come on. And it's also just, oh my God, the singing in this is embarrassing.
it's bad. It's
The
really,
songs in this,
really
the songwriting and the singing, like, just like all of it. Every time somebody starts singing, I'm just like, oh
forced
boy, I'm in for
rhymes.
some bullshit.
Forced rhymes all over the goddamn place. You cannot escape them. It is like it's all first pass shit. Like it is stuff that it's like they came up with this as soon as they could and then cranked it out. And that does have to do with the fact that Doug released videos on a set schedule. So like weekly and bi-weekly, like he was under the clock. So it's not necessarily like he always had the time to be able to do whatever it is that he wanted to do. It's like it's something that Dan Olson remarks on his video on the wall, which again, go watch that if you hadn't. Jen and I have talked about it a lot, but it's something that like it showcases this weird dichotomy where Doug has there is so much obvious effort in his videos. Like you break down all the shit that had to go into making them, and it's like, yeah, a lot of people worked on this, and there had to be a lot of work put into it. And all of it is low effort. All of it.
Yeah. No matter how many things he has to do, he does it with the least amount of effort possible.
And like the best attempt at stylism he has that's coherent is the fact that he occasionally knows how to apply like a canted angle. Like sometimes he will be able to use visual cinematic language in ways that is vaguely coherent, but most of the time, like Jen pointed out, like once you become cognizant of what the idea of blocking is, I maintain that maybe half of these videos are completely fucking unwatchable. You're like, oh my God, why did someone film it like this?
Yeah, because that's the thing too, is that this is essentially a television show, right?
Yes,
He has
100%.
crafted this as his television show, that he is the showrunner, lead star, mastermind behind. This is his one-man show. It's not just like a YouTube channel where you upload review vlogs or whatever. Like these are treated as episodes of a long-running program. And with that in mind, God, this is terrible television. Oh my
Oh, Jesus.
Lord. The idea that, I'm just going to keep repeating myself if I say the idea that this has to be a television show is kind of insipid. Let's just treat it like it is and move on. I don't think I
Yeah,
have anything else to say about Moulin Rouge. I want to get to AI, which
this
surprised me in
this is a
many respects.
video. This video like lived in my head. Like even from when back when I was a fan, like I remember being like really caught off guard by the tone and direction that Doug takes these criticisms he has for AI in. And upon revisiting it, it becomes very obvious as to why it caught me off guard. It's because it's probably the most coherent video he's ever made. That's not to say it's not full of bullshit, which it is,
God, the
but
TMZ shit in this. That's the other thing about Doug is that imagine if, and I don't watch a lot of Family Guy, but imagine if the cutaway gags made up like half the runtime of every episode. That's what watching Doug Walker is like, where like he thinks he has a funny idea, and so half the video has to be about this. So he's got like seven poor schmucks that he's making play
Oh.
TMZ reporter hacks, and this takes up like a good 30 to 40% of this 40-minute
and
long review,
and
and none of it is funny.
if you're sitting
None
there
of it is
wondering
funny.
why is he talking about TMZ in a video about Stanley Kubrick and Steven Spielberg's I don't fucking know.
I
That's
have
the genuine
no
answer.
idea
It's
why TMZ has to be the comedic underpinning in a video about AI artificial intelligence.
Dude, the segue that happens at the very beginning when he's just like when like that bit goes on for so long and then the transition into him talking about AI is, you know, representing somebody is complicated. It's just like, is that the best you could do? Is this really the best you could do in terms of and look, this is not a tacit like defense of TMZ, though the like scum of the earth, but also like it's such an easy target. Why did you devote a solid 10 minutes of this video to making fun of these parasites?
But
Like,
yeah,
why
like
did you even give them the time of day?
making fun of TMZ is like that song from a few years ago that was like Victoria's Secret was made up by a dude, and I'm like,
Oh,
we
mm-hmm.
already know, like everybody knows this. Everybody feels this way. Everybody with a goddamn brain cell feels this way about this. I don't understand why you think you have to like make some kind of grandstand about
Yeah.
TMZ or about Victoria's Secret or whatever. But the thing about the AI video, the Doug Walker's episode on Steven Spielberg's AI, which for the record, to put this into perspective, I initially was like, okay, I've never seen AI. I'm gonna watch AI to get ready for this. I ended up not doing that because I wanted to go into one of these videos without a frame of reference for the
That's a good
thing
idea.
being discussed. Because I did over the weekend. Like I watched The Wall. I watched Fury Road last year to get ready for Furiosa, so that was fresh in my brain. I've
Hmm.
seen Hocus Pocus in the past, but I've never seen Moulin Rouge. I've never seen AI. I wanted to go in as like the intended audience, more or less,
Yes.
but it's like people that are too young that don't have access to like DVD rental stores to actually
Me
watch
when I saw
goddamn
this.
to actually watch these goddamn things, where like the copyright infringement is kind of part of the point.
Yes.
Uh, and so watching the AI video, oh man. And knowing what I know about demo reel and knowing what I know about the storyline of that, which basically has a whole episode devoted to exercising Doug's own chastising of Jake Lloyd,
Hmm. Yep.
makes AI feel incredibly bizarre. Because the thing about Doug Walker is that he is a very parasocial man.
Oh yeah. Oh
He
yeah.
is incredibly parasocial, where so much of his criticism relies on his particular interpretation and the motivations of the people that he is discussing. And so half of his discussion of AI just feels like negotiating the schism between the sensibilities of Kubrick and Spielberg, which,
Hmm.
to be fair, was a schism that had to be worked out when that movie came out and should always be in conversation about that movie to this day. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. The problem is that the way that he comes at it is so disingenuous, where he ultimately makes himself look like a fucking clown because
He just comes across as a mean asshole. Like
he just comes across as a mean asshole who was like, Spielberg, how dare you do this to the sensibilities of Kubrick? Until he tries to make a point out of it by having
yeah.
the critic learn things about the production of the movie that recontextualizes his interpretation of the ending. And I'm just like, okay, so wait. You wrote this script where you, instead of retroactively revising your criticisms of this movie with this new information that you've gleaned, work in the gleaning of the new information to the process of the criticism. And this is what I mean when I say the critic, the character, is Doug, right? Let's not
Yes.
we don't need to pussyfoot around it. The critic is Doug if Doug allowed himself to get away with only publishing first drafts, which is that some point in writing this script, he figured out the thing about the ending of AI that everybody was befuddled with at the time. And I don't know who started this, but the idea of the coda, where the whole like 2000 year aliens shit of that movie, everybody assumed that Spielberg made that up when that was actually all Kubrick.
Which
And
I would like to point out that I have since seen AI. It has been a long time. I really genuinely do not know what I would think of that film right now because I mostly kind of found it confusing in my teenage years because it's a very strange movie, but I want to give it another shot one day. But he is wrong about the interpretation of his ending of this film. Like straight up, the aliens are not aliens. They are humans that have evolved into being robots. And like this happy ending is not happy. When you watch the movie, you're like, oh my God, this is the bleakest shit I've ever seen in my life. Like, you'll go and watch it and understand what I mean, but like the way Doug frames it is inherently disingenuous and straight up wrong. Like, I thought this movie was way different from how it actually ended up playing when I finally did see it in high school. And I was like, why did he do that? It's because it doesn't make sense if he's like that, the way in which he writes this in this first draft way. If he did get it right, all of his points don't matter.
yeah, and that's the thing too, is that he very much frames, I don't know if he says it explicitly, but the thing about AI that anybody can see from a mile away is that AI is like a genre blend. It's a
Yes,
sci-fi story
sci-fi
that's
fantasy.
structured as like a fairy tale, you
Hmm.
know? It's got fairy tale sensibilities to it. But Doug can't take that part of it with him. And
Mm-mm.
so he's constantly just like pounding on the movie for its logistics of like, one, I don't know how to tell you this, but just because a character in a movie says that something is this way does not mean
Just
that it's actually that
no.
way. You don't have to get on this whole hullabaloo about how the robots are actually able to do X, Y, Z when a certain character says that they shouldn't be able to. That is not a thing you should get hung up on because you're thinking of it in the Jurassic Park screenplay front, where like everything has to be treated as gospel. Ironically, it doesn't. Like there are things, characters can be wrong about the way that things are happening in front of their
or
eyes.
or the juxtaposition presented can be the point. It's like, yes, a lot of the ethics and a lot of the like the ways that the robots express themselves in this movie, it's like the fact that it's not what characters like William Hurt say that it's supposed to be is supposed to be demonstrative of the fact that human beings fucking ruin everything and they design robots improperly and they learn emotions anyway even though they weren't programmed to. That's what happens to the characters in the film. It's a character arc. It's a story. That's how this works.
Yeah, it's like a classic Frankenstein paradox, right? That's what AI is all fucking about. It's Frankenstein and Pinocchio had a baby. That's what the movie
Yes.
is. It's
Yes.
the
100%.
man, it's the creation of man who rejects man and ultimately transcends man. That's the Shelleyan version of it. But the fairy tale version of it is it's Pinocchio with sci-fi aesthetics. But Doug can't wrestle the merging of the two styles of storytelling, and so he just treats it like Jurassic Park, and so every little logical inconsistency has to be an accident
It's
when
very
it's a
strange.
movie that operates clearly on a lot of metaphorical levels that shouldn't, like, the contrivances are part of the point because they want you to take away some kind of thematic element from it. Like
And it's not
it's not
like
a
that the
coincidence that David finds the blue fairy under the water. It's
oh my
meant
God.
it's meant to be tonally dissonant. Why can't you understand?
And it's not
Ah,
like this is some oddball away from Kubrick and Spielberg's typical sensibilities. It's like both of them have done this before and did it. I mean, well, obviously Kubrick didn't afterwards, but like Spielberg would afterwards engage with this kind of stuff after that. But like, even still, there is something refreshing about this video in the way that Doug is actually able to articulate points about like auteurism and like able to selectively identify trademarks of Kubrick's style, like when he's talking about how good of a job Spielberg does of emulating Kubrick's visual style and his compositions and his lighting and stuff, but it feels odd because the editing doesn't quite match the same way it does in Kubrick. And honestly,
genuinely good analysis
that is
there.
a good criticism of saying that like Spielberg is good at mimicking this, but he doesn't really do as great of a job at mimicking this, and that feels strange. It's like that's a criticism. You did it.
That
You finally did it.
Yeah, and that's a thing that also takes like being well read. It's not something that's going to jump out at you. So it comes from a person who's clearly studied the work of these two people and knows a little, is able to recognize some things about it. But he's just like, look, the thing about Walker is that he's a bad writer and he doesn't know how to interpret writing because of it. Like he's a
Unless it is,
bad
again,
writer.
Jurassic Park screenplay, which even then I don't even necessarily think he would be able to like he would be one of those people that's just like there's a geographical inconsistency in this one scene and then he'd fucking flip his shit about it and it's like oh my god, nobody who watches this movie gives a shit about this kind of stuff. Like this to me is that Doug, one of his biggest problems is that he has fucking CinemaSins brain. Is that it's the fucking like, oh, every time something is tiny and wrong and I get to point it out and look smart, it reflects poorly on the movie when it's just like this tiny
Every time I notice that writing is happening, there is a
if
flaw.
if a criticism you have can double as trivia, it's a bad criticism. Like, I don't know how else to verbalize it other than like, just because you can point out something that isn't completely aligned with everything else, it's like the art of filmmaking is about deception. It's about making you not notice things because nothing is perfect. Therefore, there is always going to be something wrong with what you're seeing, and filmmaking is making it look like there isn't anything wrong.
And CinemaSins and people like Doug, well, especially CinemaSins, took exactly what you're saying. I know CinemaSins believes exactly the same thing because of the way he
Mm-hmm.
talks about these things, but he doesn't care about what that process serves. He only
No.
cares about how well you can execute that process, right?
Yes.
So that's why like 10 Cloverfield Lane is one of his most positive reviews because ultimately all these fucking like unitary executive perfect movie guys are working backwards to like 12 Angry Men
Yep. Yep. Yep.
of
Yep.
just like complete nuts and bolts, which don't get me wrong, one of my favorite fucking movies. I love 12
Yeah.
Angry Men. I
I
keep
have the
12 Angry
Criterion.
Men. Like, I love 12 Angry Men so fucking much, but that's not all that movies have to be.
I don't
Not
want
every
every
movie has
movie
to be
to
12
be
Angry
modeled
Men.
after Sidney Lumet. I don't need every single movie to try and do that.
Yeah, like I don't need every movie to be like a Sidney Lumet picture. And I don't understand. I'm just fundamentally at an impasse when it comes to these guys about this. I know this they have not thought about this much, but I have. Where because I'm just like I see everything that these people say. I'm like, okay, which one is it? Like what is the movie that these people are looking for? And it's 12 Angry Men.
Hmm.
And so I take that and I try to work forwards. I'm like, what is it about 12 Angry Men that like gets these guys so rock hard about movie making or whatnot? And like what makes them so fundamentally unable to engage with anything else? And part of it is because of just perspectives about filmmaking that I completely do not hold whatsoever as somebody who has experienced the act of filmmaking and
Hmm.
uh, tenfold the act of criticizing and tenfold the act of viewing
Yep.
filmmaking and thinking about filmmaking. But the other problem with Doug Walker is that he's fundamentally unable to reckon with like tones and
Ugh.
genres that he doesn't particularly care for. And I'm sorry, but as a critic, if you're going to be professional about this, you have to be able to wax poetic about shit that you just don't feel that particularly about or that stuff that
You
doesn't
have to be
fit your
sincere.
wheelhouse, but you've been asked to review anyway, right? Anybody who's ever written for a fucking newspaper or a website has just been like, okay, you've got this movie this week, and had to be like, I don't, this isn't my thing. Like
Hmm.
this isn't what I would go look for and go write about, but this is my job. And the thing on the other end of it is that Doug Walker doesn't have to do this.
No,
You don't have to talk about Hocus Pocus, which we're going to get to, but I want to put a
but
pin on
like,
the AI thing. Let's put
well,
a pin
with
on the AI thing.
Well, with AI, it's that like I at least believe that it's like like I see behind the visage of that review of just being like that comes from a place of genuinely like appreciating both of the men who made this product's work and also like trying to reckon with its inherent complexity and having to come to terms with, just like is that for all of its many faults, is that I do like the conclusion that Doug comes to at the end of it just being like, trying to represent someone's work is representing them. And doing that is an intimate act that, requires compromise that Spielberg absolutely had to indulge in order to make that the best version of what it was, even if it didn't completely align with his own sensibilities. It's like, that's like one of the first times it feels like he gets at a greater point that I actually feel like is worth talking about and exploring. It's just that, God, he trips over himself endlessly to get there, and it's so tedious.
Yeah, like nothing he says about the movie before arriving at that conclusion is worth holding on to at all because it's either
No.
a false flag for the conclusion or just straight up bad criticism that doesn't understand what the movie is in the first place.
When he makes fun of the motorcycles that have the wolf faces on them for being in line with the fairy tale and techno noir aesthetic, it's just like, dude, I like it just whoosh right over. And again, it's like Kubrick is many things. He's many, many things. He's cold, he's calculated, he's slow. He's never been subtle. Ever. Neither has Spielberg. Why on earth would you expect that to be the case here?
And why do you need it to be? That's the thing with all these
I
guys too,
don't want subtlety from Steven Spielberg.
is that they all like extremely value subtlety. And I really do think it's just an extension of the pragmatism that goes into their like review cycle of
Hmm.
like, if you ask me to engage emotionally with this at all, they just like blah, they just like don't know what to do. They don't know how to talk about how anything makes them feel. They just talk about how it makes them upset.
And if I can, like this, I promise this won't be long, but I do have a minor detour that my child self never quite knew how to verbalize when watching his shit. And it's that, like, I basically I did this at the end of the video that I just fucking released today. I'm a huge fucking Stephen King nut. I'm the biggest fucking Stephen King nut you'll ever fucking meet. And I have been for a really fucking long time, since before I even watched Doug's videos. And one of the things that I watched his It video was the first thing that I ever like watched from him. And the thing is that I got on with him because of that is because I was sort of coming at this like the angle of like this was before we had the King Renaissance of like newer adaptations that really kind of feel like they're trying to do the works more justice. And I was like, man, I keep watching all these Stephen King adaptations of these books that I really love, and they're all ass. They all suck. I don't like any of them. They don't understand the material at all. And Doug is, taking them to task. And I'm like, aha, so see, someone finally gets it. And the thing I didn't understand was that Doug hates Stephen King.
Yeah.
He doesn't hate the adaptations. Every time there is anything endemic of King's style in his videos, because he talks about King a lot, but anytime there is anything endemic of King's style or the things that he talks about, it's like it's a fucking like it's a farce. He just like he hates the idea that this guy revisits the same things in his oeuvre like literally anybody. It's just like, oh, it would be like if somebody walked into again Jurassic Park and walked out and was like, oh, fucking Spielberg movie about playing God, and it's like, dude, what did you fucking show up here for in the first? Like, what? I don't understand why you go to things other than to just be like these people. They bother me because they're incurious, but also because they expect art to be something that panders to them. And frankly, the older I get, the more disgusting I find that notion.
Yeah, no, exactly. Which leads us into Fury Road.
Ugh.
which I wish I could say was the worst of these. I really
It
wish I could. So this
I'm
was the
so on
post.
board with the spirit of what you're saying though.
This is the post resisting
Revival.
copyright infringement phase of Doug Walker, which means that,
Clipless reviews.
say it again.
The clipless reviews, as he
Yeah,
calls them.
the clipless reviews, which what that really means is that he's making his own version of Mad TV the whole time. Where
Or Be Kind Rewind.
yeah. He's making his own version of the movie Be Kind Rewind, where he has to not just criticize the movie, but essentially remake it in order to structure his criticism around it. So the Fury Road review features not just like him as the critic, but it also features like a stand-in for Furiosa, who brings in a bunch of straw man about the movie. Him playing a war boy who brings in a bunch of straw man arguments about the movie. A bunch of Meninists who bring in a bunch of straw man criticism about the movie, which, God, I can't believe I got annoyed at somebody making fun of Gamergate on the internet.
Right? Like,
Like,
what the fuck?
how do you make that embarrassing?
It's because Doug Walker, and like, I don't mean this in like the politically binary way that this has been meant to use, is that Doug Walker, in every sense of the word, philosophically, artistically, he is a centrist. He operates under the assumption that any strong feelings are invalid feelings because they are not practical feelings. So he has to stay as the pragmatic center of all of these things. And anyone who feels strongly about things, well, that enthusiasm is just them getting, being swept up in hype or something. Because like the opening of this video is like, it tells you everything you know because it frames the video and tacitly insinuates that all of these critics that are talking about how much they love Fury Road are overblowing it. Like, he's
Are
obviously,
faking it or have been tricked somehow. The same way that he talks about like girls liking Moulin Rouge.
which which bothers me. Well, first of all, very true and also hideously sexist. But one thing that I like that got like this was the beginning of when I really got disillusioned with Doug's content and when I was like really beginning of falling off with, and we'll get to the falling off point eventually. But I remember being really kind of taken off guard by this because not only, I mean, obviously I love Fury Road. It's the greatest action movie of all time. If you want to call me a fanboy, good, I am. I'll suck that movie's dick all day long. But one of the things I loved about when that movie came out was just the pure joy of the critical sphere uniting around how fucking awesome it was. It was like everybody just kind of aligned of being like, yeah, man, real fucking action movies are still being made and this shit kicks ass. And of
Yeah,
course,
like
Doug
Mad
Walker, the
Max.
eternal fucking spoil sport, has to walk in and be like, you're enjoying this too much. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
fuck off.
Fucking Mad Max came at a time when like everybody was making fun of how bad action movies were
It's because they were bad
after
too.
like The Dark Knight. Once the full separation of conversation of like once superhero movies became their own thing that was separate from action movies, everybody realized how bad action movies were getting. And they were. People
Yeah,
were right to be like Fury Road is a breath of fresh air that is gonna revitalize the genre in a lot of ways. And it did. Like it earned its flowers. It still should. Like I watched Fury, like I said, I watched that last year to get ready for Furiosa. I still love Fury Road a whole hell of a lot. And the thing about Walker's Fury Road review is that he spends the whole movie trying to justify the opinion that he likes Beyond Thunderdome the most and like keeps getting made fun of for it. Which like I love that he actually expresses shame of an opinion that he has for
I
once
do
in his
too.
goddamn
And you know
life.
what? I
There's an
actually agree.
honesty there.
I
There's an
agree with him because I actually think Thunderdome is the most enjoyable of those first three Mad Max movies because, like, the first one I actually don't really like all that much. And I think Road Warrior is cool, but kind of like Doug says, is that in a post Fury Road world, it's hard to go back to the Road Warrior and not be like, this does feel like a bit of a rough draft in some places, and Thunderdome is just this weird fucking 80s movie that's just kind of doing its own thing. And you know what? It is the sole commendable thing about this video is that he rides so hard for Thunderdome, because it's just like, wow, you actually have a personality. You actually like this movie, and you're willing to put your opinion on the line in like a sincere way, in a way where I'm like, wow, something that says something about you as like a person. This is actually mildly refreshing. It's a shame that everything else you say in this video makes me violently fucking angry. Like, if this were
It's
anybody
so
else's
dumb.
fucking video, if this were anyone, like, if he had not gone on to make the staggering, monumental work of ineptitude that is the wall review, I would say this is his worst written video, because it's self-defeating, it constantly runs in circles, and the crazy thing about it is that the one of the actors he constantly employs, Tamra, who is the Furiosa stand-in,
A
like
replacement for
all
Lindsay Ellis.
all of her like you said, that she comes in to do a bunch of straw man arguments that Doug tears down. And the thing is, the hysterical thing about this is every fucking thing Tamra says in this video is right. All of it. Every single word she says. And Doug is just like he just comes into actually and then elaborates on nothing. And it's just
None
like,
of it.
well, this movie's just a little bit too simple. It's just a nonstop action movie. And like, I already hate that criticism of Fury Road, because it completely ignores the fact that this movie has like 5 separate places of breathing room that substantially breaks up the action. And the worst part is that Doug will be like, what's all this stuff that they don't explain in this movie? Like the guys on the
God.
stilts. And it's just like, it's because it tells you visually, dumbass. It's not because somebody doesn't stare at the camera and is just like, dude, the guys in the swamp thing, those are the people who survived Furiosa's initial exile, who were surviving there because the fucking thing fell apart and turned into a swamp. And it just didn't tell you that by yelling it at the camera. You have to use your brain.
Well,
Ugh.
even if you didn't get any of that context from like Furiosa, don't you just think it looks cool? Like I don't even need that. I don't even need that, but why is that your immediate reaction to anything? Is like, oh, what's the context for
I
this random element in my sci-fi picture? Are you fucking kidding me? Like
it no it truly there's got to be a schism between like the type of person that just like, I don't understand what you have to go through in life to go and see a movie like Mad Max Fury Road, a literal miracle of filmmaking, of commercial success, of critical success, to sit down in a theater and like halfway through it, when some of the coolest shit you will ever see put to celluloid happens, and you're like, I don't know if this is like adequately explained within the context of the universe. And it's like, who are you? Why are you here?
who
What the
cares? Like, why do
fuck?
you care?
I
Why is that the thing that's impeding you from
and
enjoying this? Like, don't you like get some kind of I don't know, man. I see some editing sometimes and I just get a boner. Like, don't you feel
yes,
that way about
and
these things?
you know what? It's
I
fantastic.
see a good edit and I feel the same way as like when I get horny. Like
I'm gonna basically, I know that he didn't actually say this, but our friend Zach Morgeson, I'm going to parrot a concept from his very brain for this, in that I do not know how you as a critic meaningfully can talk about Fury Road in any capacity whatsoever without a single word about Margaret Sixel's editing job on it. If you don't talk about that, what the fuck are we doing
and
here?
he's clearly studied it because he tries to evoke it in the video terribly. But he just like doesn't know what to make of any of it. It's the same thing with the Baz Luhrmann shit, right? He doesn't understand why it's edited this way.
Mm-mm.
Just that the fact that it is somehow inherently repulsive, right? He can't figure out the
It's different,
methodology.
so it's bad.
He doesn't even want to try to figure out the methodology behind any of it. And I can't wait to talk about how fucking insane the ending of this video is because he treats it like this light bulb going off, kumbaya, like snap zoom, I've transcended dimensions moment
Literally.
when he compares Fury Road to a Roadrunner cartoon, where he's just like, well, that's a story that works because it's nothing but chases. And this is a movie that works because it's nothing but chases. And I'm just like, I don't know how to tell you that you're comparing apples to like spinach, apples to like cocaine plants in South America, my guy. Like you have no idea. You don't understand the appeal of like the Roadrunner cartoons is visual humor. And why am I even engaging with this? I don't
No,
need to explain why this is stupid, do I?
no, absolutely not. It's because like the whole video is built on this fact that it's like it's what we've been talking about is the fact that it's like it doesn't even seem like Doug is invested in the own point that he's making because he's constantly like, yeah, the movie's awesome, but and it's like, why is there a but here? Why are you compelled to try and find fault so heavily in this? Like this feels like it's a result of like a psychological issue that you have where your response to overwhelming praise is skepticism, not because you're actually skeptical, but because you inherently think everyone else is too stupid to actually genuinely enjoy something great. Like
Yeah,
it's
it's like
kind of like tacitly quite insidious and like there's so many points throughout it where he's just like, oh, the never fully explained silver chrome. It's like, dude, it's fucking future drugs and warboy culture. What the fuck do you want to be explained about this in the first place? Or it's like, what's the basis of the religion? It's like, mother, like he says this, the wording he uses, what is the basis for the religion in Mad Max Fury Road? And it's like, dude, the afterlife is called Valhalla. It, what do
it's
you
not
mean?
coming from nowhere.
The basis is Norse mythology and masculinity. It's it's right there. It's the beautiful simplicity is that nothing about that movie needs to be explained to anyone. He's like, who are the people that Max saves that appear to him in flashback? And it's just like, it's the people from the last movies who's died. Are you stupid?
Even if it isn't, like, why do you need to know?
It doesn't matter. It's like there's this
It's like
line
it's
he's
like
got in
it's
it.
like asking why John Wick loves his wife. Like you're just not
Mm,
understanding why we're
it's
here.
oh my like I hate that you say that because it's so like actually something he would say. Like there's this line he's got in it that's just like it was good action, but why does that make it a masterpiece? And it's like that is the words of someone who does not understand what a visual medium is, like at all. It's like good action is not this separate thing that happens exterior to a movie and then the story is the movie because that's how Doug treats everything is like the Wikipedia summary is the movie to him and all of the actual nuts and bolts filmmaking is like extra stuff that can be there to kind of be quasi interpreted. It's just like it's a really terrible self-own that like yeah, I believe that you don't understand the nuts and bolts of filmmaking, Doug. Like that's something that like it's that there's also like so much criticism that is again a phenomenal self-own of like he makes fun of like the part of it is that he's just like he makes fun of how much not talking there is in the movie because but leans on the fact that the acting in it is good enough to support that because because that it tells the story visually and then is still like leaning on that like it's a problem and it's like what are silent movies to you? Like what is like what like I have such trouble trying to like this is what happens when you don't believe in your own point and you have to just kind of dig through shit to find like random things that can vaguely be considered criticisms to throw it. And it's like I like I get where he's coming from in the sense of like, you know, does incredible action always equal a great movie? But like this is only a notable question if you have no regard for what film as an art form actually is. It's just everything that's not like texture just doesn't exist to him. And
Yeah.
I don't understand
Everything
why.
that's not like writing and acting.
Oh yeah. And the you know what the most infuriating segment of this review is that first of all is that when he brings up the Rotten Tomatoes score, is that first of all, I
Yeah.
need everyone, like people listening to this includes you. We need to put a moratorium on Rotten Tomatoes, not because it's this dumb binary way to think about movies, which it is, but it's because everyone uses it wrong. When something's got a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, that does not mean 96% of the critics who reviewed it thought it was good or they averaged the scores together to get a 96%. 96% means that 96% of the people that reviewed it would give it a passing grade.
Yeah.
That means anywhere from a 6 to a 10. It means nothing. So when Doug is like, that means that critics think that Fury Road is better than Fargo, Pulp Fiction, The Exorcist, Die Hard, The Hunt for Red October, and T2. And also, man, fuck you. I do think Fury Road's better than all those movies. What the fuck about it?
I want to breeze through this next one because the problems with the
Oh,
Hocus
yeah.
this review can be explained in a sentence, which is that this is a video about Doug complaining that people like a thing that he doesn't like.
This was the video. This was the one where I watched it when it
Is this your
came out,
breaking point?
and this was my breaking point. I remember texting my friend who was also into Doug's stuff, and I was just like, I couldn't finish it. Like I got
It's
15 minutes
it's
in, and I was just like, the
insipid.
review is not happening. I can't watch this. This is like, I hate to say this. I just put up a video today where I talk about I saw the TV glow with my friend Luke, and we have this whole segment where we talk about how much we hate the word cringe. But cringe is the only word I can use to describe this unholy beast of a video.
Cringe implies effort in a way that I don't think fully applies to what's
Fair.
going on here.
Fair.
Because there is no criticism of this movie. Just the fact that he thinks it's annoying and that people like it too much. I don't
And
even need to justify any of what's going on. I don't need to like get on my soapbox about why people like Hocus Pocus. I don't give a shit about Hocus Pocus. That's not what I'm trying to do here.
no.
But what it reveals is that Doug just sees his opinions as superior to everyone else's. Like his taste, his cycles with media, the whole fucking running joke about how you'd rather be watching Evil Dead 2, like, oh, so fucking original. You'd rather be watching a movie from the 80s that stars a guy. Get over yourself. Like, come
And
on, dude. You
like
call yourself a critic. It's just
it's
completely disingenuous. There's no reason to engage with it.
And it has the same problem as the Fury Road review because at the very end, he ends up cannibalizing his own point by showing that everyone who likes the movie is like, yeah, man, it's not that serious. Like, we just kind of enjoy it because it's like a goofy little movie.
Yeah, it's the
And it's
same thing with the
like,
Moulin Rouge shit, where it's like, oh,
and
everyone secretly thinks this a guilty pleasure?
and
That
it's
means
also
this all
like
makes sense to me now.
it's also like the AI video in that it only makes sense as a first draft because it's like, then why did you make this if this was the conclusion you ended up coming to? Because like again, like a Hocus Pocus, like that is an enjoyable little Halloween movie. I'll throw that on, I'll have a good time, I'll watch it with my fiance. It's cute, it's fun, whatever, man. Like it's like there is plenty of shit in it that is objectionable. Like, yeah, the focus on the fact that the main character of that movie is a virgin is fucking weird, and it should be made fun of because it's funny. But also, like, why did you feel the need to make this? Because the people that like just people that just enjoy it, and it's like, and they seem to enjoy it for the reasons that you enjoy making fun of it. Because like the most effort in this video goes into Doug's Bette Midler impression, which frankly is not bad. But at the
A
same time, it's like
surprisingly cunty drag performance from Doug.
he has an understanding of what makes those characters of the witches compelling. It's like, yeah, those are why people watch the movies because they're funny. And it's like, so why did you make this entire video about this? It is
He
such a
makes it
baffling thing.
Well, that's the thing is that the critic has to have like an individual character arc that resets every episode and whatnot.
Ugh.
So he can't take any of the lessons that he learned from Moulin Rouge to Hocus Pocus because the people that watch these videos that think Moulin Rouge is girly and faggy and think that
Hmm.
Hocus Pocus is stupid and for children and a little bit faggy, get the same appeal
There
out of the first like 90% of the video before the critic like learns his lesson and has to change his mind.
there is always like a really, and I can't like verbalize this in a way that makes total sense, but I feel like you'll know what I'm talking about, is that in Doug's criticisms in like a socio-cultural context, there's always an underpinning of like sexism and homophobia that's like really distinctly 90s coded. Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
never obvious. It's always in implication and never like front facing, but it's always just like, man, why did you say that?
The weirdest moment in all these videos, the weirdest one that I watched is when he gets a little bit woke with it and when he's at the end of the Mad Max video,
Yeah, yeah,
one of the
yeah, yeah,
Gamergate
yeah.
guys, and he makes an actually really good punchline. It's like, "What are you, gay?" And they're all
It's
like,
funny.
"That's funny. That's a good joke." And they
Yes.
ruin it by making that scene go on for like
And
5 more minutes with a completely different comedic setup and punchline
and
that he doesn't need. So he ruins it. He ruins the only
and
good moment of that video.
like Doug is also very like South Park coded in a way where he's just like, oh, because I make fun of one people, I have to make fun of the other, and that's why he makes fun of the girls in that video. Because one thing about the Mad Max, not to backtrack too hard, but like one of the most baffling things about that video to me is the Tom Hardy fangirls part of it, which I am adamant that's not a thing.
That's
Like
not a
that is
thing.
that is not a thing, has never been a thing, and there was never a contingency of people who were just like, "Oh my God, Tom." Like, look, Tom Hardy's attractive man, good-looking dude, good actor, like him a lot. There has never been like a huge swath of like Twilight level fangirls around Tom Hardy. So like Doug invented them to be a counterpoint to the weird Meninist crowd in there, which is just like which it is also very funny that that he assumes that the same people who hated Fury Road for not being manly enough wouldn't also be incredibly homophobic. Like, I think that's a very funny schism that shows how out of touch he is because it's like, nah, man, that's the same fucking people, but cute that you think that they would be able to make that distinction.
Okay, let's get to the the white whale that's already been braised many times over by this platform. But I swear to God, I have unique things to say about this, which is
The
I
Wall.
watched The Wall this weekend, the original movie,
One
and
of my favorite movies and one of my favorite albums of all time. Most of my friends are Pink Floyd fans. I am a bigger Pink Floyd fan than they are. So,
I am not hugely into the music of Pink Floyd, but I wanted to come at this one with the most like prerequisite salience that I could.
mhm.
So I was like, I need to watch this movie. I need to watch this movie so I can figure out what's going on here. And I fucking love The Wall. I
It's so
love
good.
that movie.
It's so good.
I was upset. It was pure like raw nerve Eisensteinian stimulation in a way that I have
Changed my fucking
seen.
life in high
I've not
school,
seen a
man.
movie like that in a really long time. I love The Wall. I love so many of its ambiguities. I love its thematic complexities. I love its, in certain ways, the way that it's understated. I love a lot of the filmmaking that's going on here. All
Insane
things,
shit.
all things that exist in some sort of language that Doug Walker does not speak. I don't want to get too much into the production angle of this because I don't know how much of a shit Doug Walker gives about Pink Floyd or the Wall movie or what drew him to this. And I don't want to speculate on that because speculating on it is useless and has been done enough. What I want to talk about is the content of what is here, which is, my God, from frame one, you can tell that this guy has no idea how to recreate at all the storytelling in the movie. Like when it starts and he's got the like paper taped on the door to the hotel room, just like rock star brooding, do not enter. I'm just like, oh
Here we
boy.
go.
You're not going to try to parse anything that's going on here subtextually. You're just going to be on your high horse about how rock stars are like self-centered and whatnot. And I'm like, that's the point. That's one of the points. That is one of the points. Is that the self-centeredness of fame and artistry is a vulnerability of the human psyche. Like that is what the movie is about. The vulnerability of the individualism that comes with like fame makes you vulnerable to things like fascism that makes you on a good day, interrogate what got you there. And that is like something that you have to reckon with coming from multiple sources, right? Issues with how you see women, issues with how you were treated as a child in the educational system, issues with daddy issues, right? Because your dad died in the fucking war, which is rough. It's fucking
And
rough.
we have to, I want to make this point perfectly fucking clear, is that this is based on a real thing that happened to Roger Waters. Like, his dad was an actual conscientious objector in World War II who formally enlisted and died months after this happened. And then he was put into a school system that was borderline, if not borderline, authoritarian because, dude, the Thatcher administration was fucked beyond belief. Read about it. It really doesn't take a lot of effort to find out how fucked it all is. But, like, this comes from a place of real, actual, sincere pain and loss and a desire to relay this experience to people, which requires you to have a modicum of empathy in how you assess it, like at least a little bit. And Doug, like, this is, I think this to me is not only his most incoherent piece of criticism, to me, it is like endemic of kind of the attitude of people like Doug on the internet when they encounter suffering that they do not immediately understand, so therefore it is beneath them and whiny and shitty and bad. And it's just like, it is like prima facie repulsive. Like, you
Yeah.
just watch it and you're like, dude, you're being an asshole.
Like you're like I hate to say like leave Roger alone, like
Yeah,
whatever,
it's like
but
Roger Waters is a douchebag. This is well known. Like I don't have any like sympathy for him right now, even though politically he's actually pretty well minded. But like, Roger
when
Waters
you're
is an ass.
yeah, when you're engaging with art like this though, like I don't know how to say this because it feels like common sense to me, but you should like try to engage with the emotional tenor of the piece. I don't know how he like how do you, what do you have to do to get completely desensitized by some of what's going on in the wall?
The
What
I
do you
think
have to
the
do to be able
there's
to completely like emotionally distance yourself from what's going on there?
in like, I think it's sort of in like a little bit before the middle of the review, there's a moment where everything wrong with this video aligns and the stars kind of come together, and it's uh the "We Need More Victimization" song.
Oh my God,
And
that's
it's
I
the
was surprised
part,
by how fast that happens. That's like 10 minutes in.
oh God. Well, there's
Like
this,
the second song.
it's this part where he acknowledges that the complaints about the school system that Roger Waters has, which is divorced from context in what Doug is talking about, which is incorrect because Doug is like using his own frame of reference over Roger Waters's, which, like, those school systems that Doug and Roger grew up in were not the same at all, like even a little. But like, he acknowledges that the complaints with the school system are valid, and then immediately after that says, yeah, grow a pair. And I'm like, dude, this is about how these systems are abusing and neglecting and destroying the imagination of children and harming them. And your response is, get over it. We all know it sucks. It's like, first of
I
all,
was
it's
say it
coward
happens
shit
to,
because you
it
don't want
happens
to.
to it happens to everybody is meant to be like a heartbreaking moment to witness in the
Yes,
film, and Doug uses that as like a comedic dismissal of what's going on in the
it's
film.
like, dude, this is supposed to be like tragic, the fact that school systems are like this. It's like, don't you want kids to be happy? Like, this is, it feels like I am trying to explain to someone who is setting children on fire why they shouldn't be doing that. It's like, dude, like, who hurt you? Like, why did you respond to this
Clearly
in this
nobody
way?
that badly, or he might feel a certain type of way about
Like,
this.
do you need
Like,
therapy? Like, honestly, like, that's a genuinely such a nasty sentiment to hide in there. It's just like, I don't know why you would say that and then immediately just be like, yep, continue on. And the one of the reasons that I'm so confident in my knowledge of knowing Doug's thought process behind the way his writing works isn't just because I've watched a lot of these a lot, but it's also because I think around the time the Nostalgia Critic was revived, he started releasing videos that is himself and his brother Rob, his writing partner, watching the videos in like a session where they are like writing notes for the review, which already lets you know something about their process, which is fundamentally flawed in that they
Well,
go in.
when I learned how the CinemaSins guy like does his like workshop, when I
Mhm.
saw him like there's a famous video of him watching Spring Breakers and like showing his behind the scenes process
Oh yeah.
where he like pours a glass of wine and turns the movie on. He gets like 5 seconds in, pauses the movie and said, "That guy's grabbing his dick," and writes it down. And then he puts the
It's
movie back on.
it is more or less that. It basically it's a highlight reel of him and Rob watching a movie that they're planning on reviewing, which like I don't know why you would pick to review something and then try to say something about it. That seems bizarrely backwards to me, but okay. But like you basically every joke within a Nostalgia Critic review finds an inception in those behind the scenes videos. Like basically like all of the little highlights, you're just like that's why he made that joke, that's why he made that joke, that's why he made that joke. And for if you watch all of them, it's like I how do I even phrase this? It's like his goal to make these reviews exists in its own liminal space where it's not supposed to be criticism. It's not supposed to be satire. It's not supposed to be like this self-serving thing. It's supposed to be none of these things and all of these things and ends up being this chimeric monstrosity, which the wall undeniably is, which also I would just like to point out that of all the videos to get an actual fucking rock star for, of all the videos, this one.
Sure. I don't
I
even
mean,
care.
look, it's not like Corey Taylor of Slipknot has really been doing all that much of note musically in the last couple of years, but I mean, like, I why why would you just like imagine if like
Because he said yes, Jake. It's
well
all in the
yes
production.
that's
It's
right
because he
it
said yes.
I
He's in the
you're
video
you're
because he said
right
he would do it.
I think the actual reason is because his son who is in the video watches Doug. I think that's why. Like I'm
Ah.
almost 90% certain because frankly any other way this came to be it makes me feel like ill. Like I'm just like ugh. Like it's rough to be even a mild Slipknot fan and try to reconcile that with this video.
But no, yeah, the whole thing with the wall is that it's supposed to be this kind of maximalist showcase of Doug's talent when it's extremely narrow, minimalist, shallow criticism that refuses to engage with any of the historical context that informs the material, right? When they do that
But
whole
it's a
thing.
World War II reference.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I was like, is this a World War II reference? I'm just like, what are you doing?
It's like, no, it's fucking about World War II. Like
That's what the
fucking
whole movie is about.
what do you think the Gerald Scarfe animations are for, man? Like, it is literally depicting the Blitz. Like, you're talking about it like it's shoehorning it in, and it's just like, no, the imagery is evoking the Holocaust because that's what the movie's about.
Yeah, and it's like the
Why
same.
is Schindler's List shoehorning in these Nazis? Like, what the fuck are you
All right,
talking
stop,
about?
stop, don't say that. The thing that's so confusing and so like entrancing about Doug Walker's The Wall is like just how confident he seems in how
Hmm.
belittling he is of the work and of Waters, which like I don't give a shit if you like Pink Floyd. I don't give a
Yeah,
shit
I
if
don't
you
either.
like The Wall. You don't have to think The Wall is good, but you're not trying. If this is how you're
And
gonna talk about it,
and
you're not
even
trying.
if even if
Even if you think this is legitimately like self-centered and legitimately like near, I'm talking about Waters here.
yeah, yeah, no,
Even
no,
if
yeah.
Doug legitimately thinks that Waters just complains too much and is like
Like
a dummy.
it would be one thing if that's where it started and ended. But then there is, in my opinion, like I don't want to say that this is offensive and say that like not in the traditional sense that offensive is utilized, but like I find it mildly offensive when Doug stops the video for a little break where he decides to pimp out his fake version of the wall that he made with the musical collaborator because he says it's a love letter and a tribute to the music of Roger Waters. You know, the guy he spends an entire video calling a phony who complains and whines too much.
A whiny
Yeah,
fake phony.
and like one thing I really appreciate Anthony Fantano doing was reviewing this as an album on his show because I think people genuinely like undervalue how awful the music in this fucking video is.
God, the
Like
songwriting is
if I
terrible.
can add something to the discussion here that's not in like the Dan Olson or Lady Emily videos, it's that the production on Doug's version of The Wall sounds like gutter trash. The guitar tones sound wooden as shit. The instrumental layering feels like it wasn't even like mixed. It feels like they just put all of the sound effects together in a video file. It doesn't feel properly layered. It doesn't even sound like it is properly mastered. It's not like it's too quiet or too loud. It's just that these things like don't like mesh together and they sound like goop. It's terrible to listen to.
Just for fun, I like gave this video the whip test this week. I put it on while I was in the car and just like sitting around in the car and just to see
Oh
like what the music
man.
just to see what the music sounded like, and oh my God, it sounds awful. That's the
Bro, I
thing.
would have crashed the car
Is it like
immediately.
Doug wants so bad for this to be like his artistic breakthrough, right? My dissection of the wall is gonna be like my breakthrough. It's gonna be what makes me legit.
What I'm
But
remembered for.
that train of thought had to enter his mind at some point, or he wouldn't have reviewed something like this, and he wouldn't have tried this fucking hard to do
Th-
it.
This is the ultimate tragedy of Doug Walker to me is that I think it is undeniable that of every video Doug has ever made, this is the video with the most effort.
And he
Think
got part of
about
it,
that for a moment.
and he got part of it by handing it off to a fucking who is this? What is all
I,
this? With the
man,
furries at the
as someone
end.
who even knows Channel Awesome Shit, I have no fucking idea.
Why did they do this? Is it because they asked him to do the music? And so he was like, well, if you're gonna make me do the music, I should get to put my character in
You
the
know what?
music.
Here's how it happened. Here's how it happened.
Ugh,
Doug watched The Wall and saw that it had weird monsters, and then was like, "I got a guy who does weird monsters. Throw him in there at the
sure.
end."
All that shit, I don't even need. No, I don't even
And
want to talk
then
about it. Can we just not do
the
that
horny
part?
furry bait comes and tells you about how these
The
things don't
wall is
have
bad because there's
intellectual.
not enough monsters in it.
Yeah, there's no intellectual development, and it's just like, buddy,
I don't know how
I
to tell
hate
you what a symbol is.
saying that you missed the point doesn't even do this justice. It's just like you are like we're not even speaking the same critical language at this point because you're just saying that devices being used are supposed to be doing things that they're not supposed to do, and you're treating it like it's the movie's problem that it's not.
Yeah, and like it he completely shows his ass with this one part in the video where I think he does the Goodbye Blue Sky parody
Oh,
where he's got all those fucking MS Paint drawings and there he has labels written on the different things for what they're supposed to represent. And I'm just like, oh, you're a fucking idiot. You didn't just make this for idiots. You are an idiot.
I wonder why the wall didn't label their monsters.
Why didn't they write on the screen what these things are
Why
supposed to
why didn't they
represent?
draw my problems on the flower so that I would
Self-content.
know? It's
Self-content. How many? What was the budget? And self-content?
I mean like
The
it
joke
would be
writes itself. Like,
true like it is Like
I
it
don't need to make a
is
joke.
it's fascinatingly bad. That is why like you can look at the comment section of this video and make no mistake, Doug is still making videos and there is still an audience who is watching it even though his like the ratio of his subscribers to his view count is lamentably bad.
Oh, he's putting up
But
like multiple 20. He's gone full Cinemassacre with this shit where he's just like uploading like multiple 20-minute videos every single day. Uh,
yep,
about like,
and
oh, and with like Collider style. There was one today where it's like, this was the original Joker, and it's about the man who laughs, the silent movie. Um,
mm, And on the one hand, I appreciate them like doing stuff like that because that's stuff that actually like I remember watching videos like remember he made like one about like the Big Lebowski once, like just basically engaging in actual critical questions that like he doesn't filter through the Nostalgia Critic. He just kind of talks about in like a video essay format. And like look, it's still Doug Walker and it's still incredibly limited and probably most of it is just straight up wrong. But like I see a willingness to engage with the question in a way that the Nostalgia Critic, the show, and the character does not do. And the worst part about the wall video, the absolute worst part, is that for all of this inane, incoherent, borderline offensive shit, at the very end, he's just like, yeah, it's all right. Like it was, it had some nice pictures and shit. And I'm just like, why did you make this? Why did you put all of this effort into something you don't care about?
he's got this whole bit of when he does, I think it's when the lions broke free. Is that what that one is called at the
Yeah,
beginning?
yeah.
Where he's just like, oh yeah, I can't believe how much I used to like this as a kid, and now it really doesn't resonate with me. I'm kind of sad. I want to figure out why. And I'm just like, you are not sad about the fact that this does not resonate with you. If this is
Also, I
what you try
don't
to,
buy that you resonated with this at any point in your life. Like, I fucking like miss me
he
with
paints
this
himself as
shit.
like he paints himself as like a stupid teenager that thought it was cool and is like sad that he's not that
That's
person anymore. And I'm
that's
just
what
like,
he
I don't
always
have any
fucking
sympathy.
does.
I don't have any sympathy for you if this is how you're going to go about exercising that.
He always sets up these straw men as like, and he's just like, look at these fucking idiots, so that when he corrects at the end and he's just like, oh, well, it was actually okay, he gets to like absolve himself of being a shithead, but it's just like, no, you just painted all the people who have like literally any positive feelings towards this at all as a bunch of drooling troglodyte dumbasses, and you're just like, ah, me, the intellectual over here. Meanwhile, if this was an essay that you turned in your community college to your film writing or screenwriting class, you would fail. My
If
film professor
somebody
would look
came
at
to
this and be
me,
like, what the fuck is this shit, man?
if somebody came to me and tried to explain the lens of like the wall's view on education, right? Education, and wrote all this shit about like modern day schooling, I would just be like, nope, send it back. You're not working with it. You gotta get time and place. You're missing the point. You're missing fundamental points of this.
It is of the pieces of criticism I have consumed in my lifetime, barring like I mean, literally like bottom of the barrel letterboxed reviews that are probably written by teenagers. This is one of the single worst pieces of singular criticism that I think has ever been made manifest. Like, I'm really not joking when I say that I cannot conceive of something that this video does that it does not utterly fail at as a work. I don't care what you classify it as. It's just that not like I feel like I have been more than generous in occasionally throwing Doug a bone with some of these videos, but The Wall is not one of those cases at all. There is
I feel,
simply nothing here that is redeemable. Nothing.
I feel like we've done a good job of not leaning too hard on just the fact that we disagree with Doug on the nature of these
Yes,
works, but the
like
fact that he's bad at expressing what his opinions even are. That happens with the Hocus Pocus thing. That happens with this, right? He's bad at expressing what he even means to begin with. And that's what makes them so puzzling to watch. Because I love a well-written review from somebody who completely like disagrees with me about what anything like means or if they feel positively or negatively about it. But if I can follow what that person is saying and they're saying it well, I get riveted by that shit.
yes, I still, to this day, will occasionally get shit from even my friends for still following a lot of people on platforms like Letterboxd or even YouTube of people who I regularly find myself disagreeing with, but they are simultaneously people who I'm like, oh, but they think about shit. Like, I like to follow people who can broaden my perspective a little bit and make me see why. And that, like, that doesn't make my interpretation of some of their opinions to be any less baffling. Like, the worst movie I've seen this year, other than that god-awful Fear Street movie, is the new Paul W.S. Anderson action movie that's like a fucking bad Mad Max ripoff. And, like, there are, like, a dozen people on Letterboxd that I follow that swear by Paul W.S. Anderson and his movies and that he's like some underrated action auteur. And I'm like, I have never understood opinions less than this. It's like it is indistinguishable from so much of the corporate Hollywood schlock that I find like utterly unremarkable. But you know what? It's interesting that a lot of these people think this way, and I want to understand why they think it because I actually want to know. I don't want to see someone who disagrees with me and go, ew, bad. No,
Get
you're
away.
stupid.
No, that's
Yeah,
never the goal. That's not what we're trying to do with this segment
that's
about.
not criticism. That's bad criticism. Look,
That's what
criticism
Lotus
is
does
not
to
about
Moulin
making a
Rouge.
point about a thing. It's about making yourself understood.
Yeah, and I fundamentally do not understand why Doug does this. Just by looking at the content of these videos, I don't know what compels him. I
It
don't.
makes me
Like, I
feel a
don't
lot better
understand.
about my creative pursuits in life from the mere fact that, like, not because I'm a better artist than Doug, but because I clearly give more of a shit about the things that I make than he does. He basically admits that he doesn't give a shit about half of these things, which is like, I just, like, how. Like people like I know that people are young and like obviously I didn't see through until it was glaringly obvious, but at the same time it's just like it's like we all have bad formative media. That's what this exercise is supposed to be about. But at the same time, it's just like this is still kind of like I don't want to say dangerous, but at the same time, it's like it locks people into a really close-minded way of thinking that like if you interact with art the way that Doug Walker interacts with art, you should probably stop. Not because, like, I am ideologically imposed to you, but because you will not find fulfillment through art this way. You just won't. Like, it's not for you. It's like, some things can just not be for you. And that's something that I am baffled that has to be explained to people in the modern media landscape of so many people making so many different things, and there's like so many different audiences for stuff. But like, you can just, accept the fact that something like Moulin Rouge, that's not a movie for Jake. I don't like I can articulate why I don't like it and the things that I think it maybe does well, maybe the things I think it does poorly. And yeah, I'm not going to rate it very positively. I don't like it very much. It's not my movie. But I don't think less of the people who like it, and I don't like reject their reasoning either. It's like Moulin Rouge is an impeccably put together film that has gorgeous set design, incredible choreography, and interesting frenetic camera work and editing, and this very kind of specific sort of storybook kind of tone to it that makes it kind of interesting and it makes it stand out. And like I can totally see why it was popular in the landscape of cinema at the time and why it got all the acclaim that it did. I don't like I borderline hate that movie and I just told you like tons of great things about it. That's criticism.
Yeah, like it's figuring out the why
The
of it all.
hows.
The why that's inside of you, not the why that's inside of the movie. Not all the time.
Doug
It's
doesn't even
about
get to the
both.
why. He's just the what. He just stops. It like
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's bad or it's good.
The only time Doug asks like a question more complicated than what is like, how could anyone like this? And that if you're asking yourself that, that's where you start, right? You can start
Mm-hmm.
from there and get somewhere. I've seen a lot of good criticism that does, but that's all that he does is he wants to try to like make up a guy who likes it that he can make fun of.
Making up a guy. The classic rhetorical device of bad critics is making up a guy. And you know what? I won't pretend like I'm not guilty of this occasionally, but like this is the exception and not the rule. There are movies that I see, like, I think the most notorious and good example I can present is the film Tenet, Christopher Nolan's Tenet, which is a movie that
The
I am,
one of the few movies we completely disagree about because
yes,
I love Tenet.
I am waiting for someone to explain the appeal of that movie in a way that makes sense to me because it is truly something where I'm like, I can't get on board with it. I'm not going to tell people that they're wrong, but it's also just like one of the like again, I know we also feel similarly about Zack Snyder's Justice League. I'm also just like I have nothing to be able to like I understand none of this. But that's two movies. I think Doug Walker feels this way about most films released in a given week. That's sad. Be in a world full of Doug Walkers, be a Todd in the Shadows. Be Lindsay Ellis. Be people who actually want to dig deeper into art and find something valuable, even if it isn't necessarily good.
I want to slap a rating on this thing.
I'm
And
so curious. I'm very curious.
I need to explain why I feel this way. One, your mission here was a little bit flawed because I don't have the nostalgia for the nostalgia critic that you do. So a lot of this is uncharted waters for me, and so your exercise of working out things that we might have liked in the past that we've soured on, it doesn't necessarily apply to me. And I want to say one more thing, which is that Doug Walker does not bother me if I am not looking at him.
Oh God, no.
I
That's
will forget about this as soon as we stop recording this.
oh for sure.
Ever.
Like if
I
if
will
you didn't,
never
I
have to
would
think about any of this again.
if you said anything other than that, if you were just like, no, this is gonna haunt me, I would genuinely feel bad. I did this knowing that this would be disposable to you because if it was anything other than that, that would be mean. Like that would be like bad of me.
I didn't learn anything about Doug Walker that I hadn't already inferred from mine own and observations of others, but I did get a few things for myself that I was hopefully able to communicate from this show. I did get a lot out of watching these reviews for myself that I do appreciate, but I worry that I'm gonna give this like a three just because this is not gonna stick with me. I
No,
don't I
that's
don't hate it that much.
it's something that you have to take active effort to kind of hate. And it's because like I don't hate it. Like when we're talking about it, sure. But again, like this is not something that I think about or something that like, this does not bother me in the same way that like I'll think about The Crow occasionally and I'll be like, ugh, ew. I'll think about like I actually, you know what? I just lied. I just said I think about Doug Walker. I don't. I don't think about Doug Walker. I don't think
Yeah,
about him
like
at all.
the renaissance of Dunk Walker was because the wall was so bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's ever going to be able to capture a moment like that again.
No, that was truly a moment where the entire internet just kind of united together and was like, wow, this thing just fucking sucks. Which that is kind of the most fascinating thing to me is that that is genuinely rare in kind of the online miasma that people just kind of gravitate towards one thing and are just like, oh my God, why did this happen? Like, it is very, very applicable to consider the Nostalgia Critics The Wall as like the 9/11 of YouTube. And like the actual 9/11, whenever it's brought up now, it's mostly just for comedic purposes and not for the actual tragedy that it was. So, you know what? That's actually kind of a perfect analogy.
Damn. All right.
Damn.
It's punishment time!
We went some
Um,
places today.
we went some places today. All right, let's get the scores on
Now,
the screen. We're tied with
boom.
13 points each
Ooh, how interesting.
after our first real round of the show.
Now, now the competition, it really begins.
The tables do be turning because we're essentially starting from zero.
Yeah.
I have the good thing for next episode. You have the bad thing. Oh, wait, what? Did I say that right?
No,
No,
I'm
I have the
recommending
bad.
you something good. You're recommending me
Yes, I am
something bad.
giving
So
you
why
something
don't you
bad.
go first? Because I went first last time.
Okay. So what I have for you, I was struggling. I was struggling with this pick because I didn't want to be
Can I
redundant with
can I
my.
interrupt and just say that I've really, really enjoyed doing the show with you so far. Like truly, this is
This is
like
fucking great.
I started this on a bit of a whim, and it was because I was feeling kind of creatively stalled out, and I was a little sad just because I feel like my output YouTube wise had slowed down, and this has really re-energized me. I've had a really great time doing this. But Jen, if you recommend me another country album for a third week in a row, I'm gonna drive to Louisville. I'm gonna beat your ass.
Well, that's what I was about to say, is that I knew I couldn't do any album because I had already done two albums in a row. And I was just like, we're supposed to be getting a little bit of variety here on this show.
Yeah.
Um,
Man, make me read War and Peace. I don't know.
well, I'm not going to tell you to read that on my bad week. I'm
Okay, yeah, fair, fair, fair.
But I think here's what I'm going to do. I have a particular fascination with things of a certain tone, that being fucked up teen stories, like teens dying in weird ways. I don't know. Like that's why I was so obsessed with those like Goosebumps books as a kid and like Fear Street books. It's like
We
all these
have a
crazy.
very similar brain, my friend, because this is something I remember from a very young age being lodged into my brain. I know what you mean.
And I'm always going to be drawn to these sort of like weird melodramatic stories about people in school and something horrible is happening to them.
Oh man, I wonder
It's
why
part of
you.
why I love your book so
I
much.
was about to say, I was like, oh man, body horror and teenagers. I fucking what could you possibly be
Well, you know,
talking about?
the urban fantasy gonna urban fantasy, but what I'm doing is not necessarily urban fantasy. I'm also very interested in the oeuvre of a particular filmmaker by the name of Jeff Wadlow.
I've heard this name before. I've definitely heard this name before.
He became like a Blumhouse shill very recently. He did like Truth or Dare. The last one he did was Imaginary. What if there was an evil teddy bear?
Oh, okay. I've
Um,
seen Truth or Dare.
I love Truth or Dare. Truth or Dare is one of my favorite like guilty pleasure movies ever. But what I am recommending to you is another one of his, that one of his early films that is a guilty pleasure for me, but just has enough of things that we find bizarre about movies of this type that I think you will just immediately click with. Like I want to preface this by saying you're gonna think movie is bad, but
Okay.
you're gonna fucking love this shit because I love this shit. The movie I'm recommending to you is Jeff Wadlow's 2005 movie Cry Wolf.
This is in my watch list. Ah, it's
I
because you reviewed it and I put it on my watch list. Okay,
I
okay, okay.
know.
All right,
I
all
checked
right.
it. I noticed it was in your watch list, and so that's the
I'm
one to do.
sorry, John Bon Jovi and Jared Padalecki? What the fucking shit?
What do you think I meant? What do you think I just said? What do you think I
God,
just said, motherfucker?
this, it's like,
This
it's
is what I'm
like,
talking about.
it's like the 90s had a 2000s baby.
We're gonna talk about this. It's gonna be
Oh,
great. I'm so excited to watch this movie again.
okay.
I'm so excited. So I want you to, when you're thinking about what your score for this is going to be, think about it in the lens of I do genuinely think we're both going to love this, even though it kind of
Oh
sucks.
yeah, I do.
I'm going for a guilty pleasure angle here, not like a The Crow, you're going to absolutely lambast this angle.
I'd like to think that our scores in this don't necessarily reflect our qualitative assessment of what we're talking about, but purely like the amount of joy that we experience from them
Yeah, or like
or suffering.
the intended effect. I definitely
Yeah, yeah.
contextualized my score for this episode on your intended effect of the Nostalgia Critic playlist.
Nah, this is perfectly this is my brand of trash. Like exactly. You nailed
Exactly.
it.
So I want to give us a bad segment that we're gonna kind of enjoy the whole way through.
Okay. Okay. You know what? All right. I'm that sounds cool. That sounds awesome. And in the spirit of attempting to bridge the gap to make shit, fucking to really to share something special. I won't even beat around the bush or anything. Is that I can only when thinking of things to recommend any given person, there's always going to be a short list of, some of your favorite things or whatever. So I'm going to go for broke. I'm putting down the number one,
Oh boy.
the ultimate,
Oh boy.
Jake's favorite thing in the world. Full
It's
Metal
ti-
Alchemist Brotherhood.
It's
It's time,
time.
baby.
I
All
only
right,
have 2 weeks to watch this shit. God damn
okay,
it. I'll do it.
here's how this is going to work. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is 64 episodes.
Okay, I can do that.
That said, 64 episodes, I'm not sure how conducive talking about that entire show is going to be if we have to do it in one segment.
Yeah.
So here's what I propose that we do. I think that we should break it up. It's broken up already into 4 parts. And that is 16 episodes, 16 episodes, 16 episodes, 16 episodes. I think that we should do the next episode on the introductory 16 episodes. And then every following week in our introductory segment, we will elaborate on the following 16 so that you do not have to jam-pack marathon everything. And not to mention, each 16 episode long span is kind of its own story arc in the grander scheme of things. So it's easier of a package to deal with on a week by week basis. So we can just do like a Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood check-in in the following episode weeks. That sound all right?
We'll treat my score for the first arc as the score for the first arc, but
Yeah,
then we'll keep talking and then I might
precisely.
I might retroactively revise the score if my feelings change towards the end of the show. We'll make it work.
Absolutely.
But thank you for not making this
No, we got to respect each other's
a
time to
guzzling
some
of
extent.
television.
Thankfully, like if, it's episodes are 20 minutes long, so 3 episodes is 1 hour, so this is like roughly 4 to 5 hours worth of content. So hopefully that's not too bad.
No, not at all.
And that is a surprisingly chipper note to end this episode off on. I think we needed this collective breath of fresh air after we really put ourselves through the ringer with Doug.
Yeah, with Doug and with the last episode.
We look. I think we deserved a treat, and not to mention, I have not talked about this meaningfully with anyone for years. Just because I've kind of been waiting for the right opportunity to do it. Because I mean, like, truly and honestly, this is my favorite work of art. I mean, if I'm really splitting hairs, it's probably the manga, but like Brotherhood is like in terms of honest adaptations, it's basically the manga in animated form. It abridges a couple of things, but I'll talk about that more once we actually get to it. But like, yeah, this is the ultimate. This is the jakiest Jake thing that ever jaked. And appropriate that your recommendation is also going to be some of the Jake and Jenniest things that have ever jaked and jenned. So
That's the point of the show, baby.
hell yeah, hell yeah.
Next time on Jen and Jake's Bizarre Affray, will Jake cry wolf over this 2000s dormitory picture? And how well will Jen Full Metal Alchemist?
And cut.